Chapter 600 Ring of Legends. Chapter 600 Ring of Legends. After Shifeng crossed about a dozen yards or so, the great demon Nettle sensed his presence. "Why is there still an ant? Go, finish him off." Nettle, who hovered in the air, commanded 5 level 40 chieftains to deal with Shifeng. In the great demon's eyes, a tier 1 player like Shifeng meant too little for him to take action personally. He had only killed Disciplined Paradise personally due to the Moloch's ring. Otherwise, he would have let his subordinates finish off the Guardian Knight and the others. When 100 yards stood between Shifeng and the Moloch's ring, 5 massive black demonic bears surrounded him. Just in time. Shifeng smiled faintly. He then used silent steps on one of the demonic bears. Shifeng crossed a distance of 20 yards instantly. He then activated the Aura of Wind's activatable skill, Wind Rider, his speed abruptly increasing by 220%. Transforming into a fierce gale, he easily shook off the 5 black demonic bears and continued his way towards the Moloch's ring. "Not bad for a little ant." Nettle frowned. He stretched out his left hand. A ball of black flame bloomed in Nettle's black-scaled palm. Although this ball of black flame did not radiate any scorching heat, Shifeng could clearly feel how formidable it was. If the flame so much as touched him, he would instantly lose his life. "You should feel honored to die by the great demon Nettle's hand." Nettle then lightly waved his hand at Shifeng. Suddenly, a tidal wave of black flame washed down from the sky. Agonizing screams tore from the throats of any monster that encountered these black flames. The raging fire turned them into nothingness in the blink of an eye. Not daring to be careless, Shifeng soared into the sky, avoiding the black flames by the skin of his teeth. "Despicable ant, you actually dare dodge my attack!" Nettle bellowed. In the next moment, countless black arcs of lightning appeared in his hand. Each arc was as thick as a person's thigh. The great demon then pointed at Shifeng, shouting, "Turn to ash!" Immediately, the arcs of lightning formed a giant web that flew towards Shifeng faster than when he had Wind Rider activated. This was the Tier 4 skill the great demon Nettle was most proficient with, Dark Vortex. Not even a Tier 4 NPC could dodge this skill. They could only attempt to block it. As for players, they would die instantly. Is there a need to be this serious? Shifeng was rendered speechless as he saw the black electric net that had already surrounded him. "I have to use my trump card." Shifeng no longer tried to dodge the black lightning, opting to charge towards it instead. "Trying to kill yourself now that you know escape is impossible?" Nettle smiled with satisfaction as he watched Shifeng's suicidal action. Boom! A thundering explosion occurred as Shifeng collided with the black electric net. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Not even a level 40 chieftain could survive such a frightening attack. Just as the great demon was about to turn away, he suddenly discovered that something was amiss. A golden figure flew towards him. "How is he still alive?" Nettle stared at the unscathed Shifeng. While the great demon was surprised, Shifeng arrived at Disciplined Paradise's ashes. His hand snatched Moloch's ring swiftly and placed the item in his bag. "Despicable thief! You have truly angered me this time." A cold glint flashed in Nettle's crimson eyes. Suddenly, a blood-red battle axe with a thorn-covered handle appeared in Nettle's hands. With a flap of his wings, the great demon instantly appeared in front of Shifeng, swinging his battle axe down at the swordsman. Explosions shook the air as the axe descended. It was as if Nettle's powerful attack shattered space itself, and not even Shifeng could dodge or defend against the attack in time. Boom! When the blood-red axe struck Shifeng's body, he suddenly felt disembodied. After a fraction of a pause, the attack sent him crashing into a 4-story building over 30 yards away. "What strength and speed!" Shifeng exclaimed as he climbed out of the rubble. The great demon Nettle's strength was definitely at upper rank Tier 4. If he had not switched the Aura of Wind to the Aura of Earth and activated Absolute Defense in time, even if he were a level 60 Tier 2 Sword Master, that single hit would have obliterated him. Currently, although Shifeng had not received any damage, his entire body was numb. Even moving was difficult for him. The strength of a Tier 4 Great Demon was simply too terrifying. Moreover, Nettle's strength wasn't just limited to his attributes. His techniques were similarly frightening. Nettle's simple swing had not contained any excess movements at all. The demon was operating at the same level as a top-tier expert. Against an opponent who possessed the attributes of a Tier 4 class and the skills of a top-tier expert, even in his prime, Shifeng could only turn tail and run. Nettle could not help his surprise when he discovered that Shifeng was actually still alive. A tiny little ant had actually survived 3 of his moves. He had never encountered this in the past. Before the great demon could recover from his shock, Shifeng activated Phantom Kill. Suddenly, he turned and fled at maximum speed. You want to escape? Do you really think you can run from me, the great demon Nettle? Nettle revealed a malevolent smile. To the prideful great demon, the fact that Shifeng had provoked it repeatedly was humiliating. If others heard of this, he, the great demon Nettle, would watch his reputation in the dark den wither. Spreading his wings, Nettle transformed into a black streak of light as he chased after Shifeng. So fast. As expected of a winged Tier 4 Great Demon. Glancing at the rapidly approaching Great Demon, Shifeng inwardly prayed that it would not discover his plan. Wind Rider only had a duration of 24 seconds. From the time he had activated Wind Rider until now, nearly 7 seconds had passed. He had also used up absolute defense already. If he wished to escape from the Tier 4 Great Demon, his could only rely on diversions. At this moment, Shifeng's doppelganger hurriedly activated Blade Liberation and Windwalk. The doppelganger then dashed in the opposite direction of Shifeng. None of the surrounding level 40 chieftains could keep up with the doppelganger's speed. In just a short moment, the doppelganger had shaken off all its pursuers. Roughly 5 seconds later, Nettle also caught up with Shifeng. Despicable human, I admit that you are very skilled. A little Tier 1 swordsman like you has actually forced me, the great demon Nettle, to expend so much effort to deal with you. As a reward, I will grant you endless torture. You will become my puppet for the rest of eternity. Nettle shouted, a ferocious grin appearing on his face as he watched the currently motionless Shifeng. Oh, really? You'll have to catch me first, Shifeng replied disdainfully. Catch you? The great demon Nettle's expression sank as he suddenly discovered that the Shifeng before him had changed. Although the Shifeng before him had become stronger, his eyes were that of a puppet's. There was not the slightest sign of anger within those eyes. Damn! It's a doppelganger! Saying so, Nettle abruptly jumped into the air and returned to District 5. However, roughly 4 seconds after the great demon Nettle turned to fly back to the shelter, the originally emotionless Shifeng suddenly wore an angry expression. Shifeng had swapped positions with his doppelganger once more. The Abyssal Blade's phantom skill could be an extremely powerful life-saving skill. As long as his doppelganger was still alive, Shifeng could swap positions with it indefinitely. With this move, even a Tier 4 Great Demon should not think of killing him easily. Shifeng then changed directions and flew towards District 1. Even after Wind Rider's duration ended, the Great Demon could not find any trace of Shifeng. Finally safe! Shifeng, who currently hid in a forest, breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the Great Demon does not know my trump card. Otherwise, I really would have died. Hopefully, this Moloch's ring is worth all I went through to get it. Shifeng carefully retrieved the pitch-black ring, which was engraved with innumerable inscriptions, from his bag. Omniscient eyes. Shifeng examined Moloch's ring. Immediately, a shocked expression appeared on his face. Impossible! At this moment, even Shifeng did not dare believe his own eyes. Moloch's ring was actually a legendary item. Chapter 601 Legendary Quest. Chapter 601 Legendary Quest. Even after a long look, Shifeng still did not dare believe that what he was seeing was real. Legendary items were as rare as a phoenix's feather in God's domain, and not even Tier 5 players would necessarily possess one. Any player who owned a legendary item had the power to challenge opponents of a higher tier. Take Shifeng's fragmented legendary ranked Heavenly Dragon's Breath for example. When he activated Heavenly Dragon's power, he could contend with a Lord, which was the equivalent of a Tier 2 class, for a short time. If he possessed a legendary item, he could definitely contend with a High Lord. A Lord-ranked monster was merely the boss of a 20-man hard-mode team dungeon. Meanwhile, a High Lord was the boss of a 50-man hard-mode team dungeon. The difference in power was immense. If he could equip a legendary item now, not to mention a 50-man hard-mode team dungeon, he could even lead a team in a 50-man helm-mode team dungeon. He could even give a 100-man hard-mode team dungeon a try. A team dungeon tested the overall strength of a team, while a legendary item was capable of increasing the overall strength of a team significantly. This was the why legendary items were so frightening. They could break the limits of conventional strength. Unfortunately, although the information Sherfong had obtained regarding the Moloch's ring stated that it was a legendary item, it turned out that the ring was sealed. Moloch's ring, legendary rank? Sealed by the Lord of Balrog's. Legend has it that this ring contains all of the Lord of Balrog's secrets and power. By wearing this ring, one can obtain this power. After Moloch's ring had been sealed away, the great demon Nettle stood guard over the item. The ring holds the great demon Nettle's mark, allowing the great demon to sense its location periodically. System: Legendary Quest. Lord of Balrog's Fall. Activated. Quest details: lift the seal on Moloch's ring. Quest rewards unknown. A legendary quest. Sherfong smiled bitterly. No wonder the penalty Discipline Paradise received was so severe. Just the penalty for failing an epic quest could half cripple a player's character, not to mention a legendary quest. However, I've never heard of this legendary quest before. The clues the quest provides are so limited too. It says that I need to lift the seal on the ring, but it doesn't tell me how to do that. The ring doesn't provide any clues either. It is no wonder Discipline Paradise failed the quest. Sherfong knew very well just how frightening a legendary quest was. A single epic quest had already given Sherfong such a huge headache, not to mention a legendary quest. However, God's domain was fair in all regards. If he could complete this legendary quest, the reward he could obtain would definitely be incredible. In God's domain, if a player wished to obtain a legendary item, they would have to do so by completing a legendary quest. However, a majority of the players that took this path normally ended up plunging themselves into a dark abyss. This was also why legendary items were so rare. If possible, Sherfong would rather not accept a legendary quest right now. After going through so much to get this ring, in the end, it still doesn't help me get to the Dark Denver. Sherfong sighed. Currently, as long as he held on to this ring, a great demon would hunt him. Moreover, there was no definite time as to when the great demon Nettle would make his appearance again. This was far more dangerous than his epic quest, which provided a clear time limit. Sherfong stored Moloch's ring in his bag. Right now, completing the Darkness Descends quest was of the utmost priority. Just as Sherfong was about to leave his hiding spot, the sound of a system notification reached his ears. System: Moloch's ring has detected the presence of the power of darkness. Do you want Moloch's ring to devour the power of darkness? Devour the power of darkness? Sherfong was stunned. Giving it some thought, he could not recall there being anything important in his bag. He then clicked. Agree. In the next moment, the dozen or so soul crystals inside his bag disappeared. Meanwhile, due to having devoured the soul crystals, the inscriptions on Moloch's ring glowed slightly. System: First seal on Moloch's ring lifted. It's lifted, just like that. The sudden development rendered Sherfong speechless. He then examined Moloch's ring again. Moloch's ring, legendary rank. Sealed by the Lord of Balrog's. Legend has it that this ring contains all of the Lord of Balrog's secrets and power. By wearing this ring, one can obtain this power. After Moloch's ring had been sealed away, the great demon Nettle stood guard over the item. The ring holds the great demon Nettle's mark, allowing the great demon to sense its location periodically. First seal lifted. A fragment of its power has been released. Power of darkness required to lift the second seal, 6 out of 100. All attributes plus 10%. Fire resistance plus 30. Additional skill dash. Gate of Darkness opens a teleportation gate to the central area of the Dark Denver. Duration 10 minutes. Cooldown 24 hours. Sure enough, the Dark Den and this ring are related, Shifeng stated, laughing. With this, I can head to the central area of the Dark Denver. After Shifeng equipped Moloch's ring, he activated Gate of Darkness. Boom! The ground suddenly trembled as dark smoke slowly emerged from the forest floor. After a moment, the black smoke formed a pair of gates that was over 5 meters tall. There were countless golden runes engraved on the gates, radiating a frightening pressure. So powerful. This pressure can rival even that of a Tier 5 NPC. At this moment, Shifeng even found it difficult to breathe. He felt as if he were only an ant in front of these gates. However, when Shifeng tried to push apart open the gates, he suddenly discovered that they were locked. Rather, he noticed a small groove in the center of the gates. It seemed like a keyhole. So, that's the case. Originally, Shifeng had thought Disciplined Paradise had been trying to trick him. Now, however, it would seem that he really did need the Chapter of Darkness to enter the Dark Denver. He then placed the Chapter of Darkness into the groove. When Shifeng placed the black slate tablet into the groove, the golden runes on the gates suddenly linked with each other, releasing a golden brilliance. The gates began to open slowly. The instant the gates opened, Shifeng felt as if something were emerging from within the gates. His body suddenly felt incredibly heavy, and even taking a step forward was an extremely difficult task. Just what kind of place is this dark den? The pressure from behind these gates alone is enough to suppress my combat power to 1/10. Shifeng had not felt such fear when he was in the god's grave. Is there a god on the other side? However, Shifeng couldn't care less. Gritting his teeth, he gradually pushed his body forward, advancing to the other side of the Gate of Darkness. He did not have much time left. If he did not complete his quest soon, only a dead end awaited him. After Shifeng entered the Gate of Darkness, it seemed as if he had entered an entirely different space. A mountain, so tall that he could not even see its peak, loomed before him. He could also see many magnificent temples on the mountainside. These temples grew larger as one approached the top of the mountain. The temples at the foot of the mountain were merely 10 meters in height. The largest temple that Shifeng could see was over 100 meters in height. Other than their massive sizes, these temples also radiated a powerful divine might. While Shifeng was still overwhelmed by the sight before him, a figure suddenly flew down from the peak of the mountain. The figure descended with lightning speed, and in the blink of an eye, it appeared before Shifeng. My luck can't be that rotten, right? It's actually a Tier 5 fallen angel. Dread gripped Shifeng's heart as looked up at the enchanting woman, who had 3 pairs of pitch-black wings on her back, hovering above his head. Chapter 602 Time Limit. Chapter 602 Time Limit. Fallen angels were considered higher beings in God's domain, and they were born far stronger than ordinary beings. They were also known to be invincible against ordinary beings of the same tier. Even a Tier 5 expert with a Tier 5 Taboo skill could only run when facing a Tier 5 fallen angel. I'm dead for sure this time. Shifeng could only reveal a bitter smile as he looked at the fallen angel hovering in the sky. He might have been able to escape a Tier 4 great demon, but against a Tier 5 fallen angel, he had no hope of resistance. Within a domain established by a Tier 5 being, even the 7 Luminaries' Ring's space movement would be useless, not to mention his other skills. As for competing in terms of speed, if he was not even a match for a Tier 4 great demon, how was he supposed to outmatch a Tier 5 fallen angel? In front of a Tier 5 fallen angel, even the Tier 4 great demon Nettle was an insignificant speck of dust. Human, it seems that you are quite courageous. Despite being only a Tier 1 swordsman, you have actually dared to steal Moloch's ring from Nettle, the fallen angel said, wearing a mischievous expression. She looked like a child who had just gained a new toy to play with. Before Shifeng could react, the fallen angel disappeared from the sky. By the time Shifeng realized what had happened, the charming fallen angel stood before him, her flawless white hand piercing Shifeng's heart. Instantly, Shifeng's HP, which was over 10,000, fell to 0. Is this the power of a Tier 5 fallen angel? Shifeng stared at his rapidly decreasing HP, shock filling his heart. Regarding both speed and power, the fallen angel was far more powerful than any Tier 5 players Shifeng had ever encountered. However, the fallen angel's combat standards were by far the most frightening. They were impeccable. There was not the slightest excess movement or actions. It was no wonder many experts in the past had paled whenever they spoke about fallen angels. Although Shifeng had already reached the flowing water realm, the second stage of the refinement realm, he was still far from reaching a state of perfection with his physical control. Only when he achieved a domain could he strive for such perfection. However, just how many players could achieve a domain in God's domain? At this moment, Shifeng felt quite fortunate as the fallen angel had not used any special moves to kill him. Rather, she had only needed an ordinary attack to finish him off. With this, he would only lose one level and some skill proficiency at most. Moreover, other than some items that would drop upon death, players would not drop any of their equipment when killed by monsters. What's going on here? When Shifeng opened his eyes, he discovered that he was still in the dark den after coming back to life. However, he had revived much further away from the towering mountain. If he wanted to head towards the mountain, he would have to run for more than half an hour. Normally, when a player died in a special map, they would revive back in a city. Since the Tier 5 fallen angel had killed him, logically, that should have been where he revived, in a city, yet he had revived out in the fields. Shifeng then hurriedly called up his attribute panel, checking his attributes and the contents of his bag. Good. I only lost a level and some skill proficiency. Shifeng released a sigh of relief. Regardless if he were level 33 or level 32, it did not matter too much to Shifeng. Just what is going on? Looking around, Shifeng suddenly discovered a golden avenue paved through the endless plains. There were also countless monsters moving along this avenue towards the towering mountain. The monsters' levels varied greatly, with the lowest being level 10 and the highest being over level 100. A single glance told Shifeng that there were tens of thousands of monsters moving along the golden avenue. Moreover, these monsters consisted of a wide variety of races. The majority were not linked to the forces of darkness. Shifeng even spotted human NPCs. These NPCs also did not belong to the dark forces, and they looked more like adventurers. Like the monsters, the NPCs' levels ranged from level 10 to over level 100. Why are there so many human NPCs here? Shifeng was shocked. However, his shock did not stop him from quietly approaching the Golden Avenue. As a precaution, Shifeng activated Phantom Kill, sending his doppelganger ahead of him. Surprisingly, however, even after these monsters and NPCs noticed Shifeng's doppelganger, they showed no signs of aggression. When the doppelganger stepped onto the Golden Avenue, Shifeng received a system notification stating that he could not attack anyone while inside this region. There was no danger. With this, Shifeng relaxed. He then advanced towards the towering mountain along the Golden Avenue as well. He had only arrived at the Dark Den's central region after much difficulty. There was more than an 80% possibility of the Bible of Darkness being somewhere on the mountain. Shifeng had completed quite a few epic quests before. The Tier 5 fallen angel had only killed him with a normal attack. This proved that he had yet to fail the quest. It was possible that he had only incurred a punishment because he had used an incorrect method to enter the Dark Denver. Otherwise, he would have truly been finished. If a Tier 5 fallen angel were guarding the Bible of Darkness, unless he were a Tier 6 God-ranked player, completing this epic quest would be impossible. Moreover, the fact that Fantasy Extinguisher had managed to complete this quest in the past proved that there was definitely some other way to scale the mountain and steal the Bible of Darkness. Arriving at the foot of the mountain, Shifeng discovered that the Golden Avenue led towards a massive altar. Above the altar, countless monsters fought viciously, tearing each other apart. Occasionally, victors would emerge from the ceaseless battles, holding a golden key. These victors would then scale the mountain, reaching Shifeng's original arrival point. Sure enough, my entry was flawed. After watching the situation for a while, Feng did not discover any high-tiered monsters guarding the mountain. There were also no Tier 5 fallen angels patrolling the sky. Very quickly, Feng arrived before the altar. The instant he set foot onto the altar, a system notification sounded out by his ears. System: defeat all enemies before you, and you will be given entry into the World Summit. System: you will gain 1 minute for every common monster killed, 10 minutes for every elite monster killed, 30 minutes for special elites, 100 minutes for chieftains, and 500 minutes for lords. System: you may choose 10 monsters to serve as your opponent. If you fail to defeat all of your opponents, you will die. System: you have 19 minutes to decide. Failure to do so will result in automatic forfeiture. You will die if you forfeit. I see. There is a restriction for entering the World Summit. It seems that I'll have to choose who my opponents carefully. Feng finally understood the gameplay here. However, if I only kill 10 common monsters, 10 minutes won't be long enough to explore all of the World Summit. I will most likely run out of time after traveling a short distance. No matter how he looked at it, an item like the Bible of Darkness would not be easy to find. It might even be at the very top of the mountain. He would not reach the top of the mountain even if he spent 10 hours traveling. However, if he chose monsters that were too powerful, he'd be at a disadvantage. On the off chance that he could not kill the opponents he selected, he would have truly dug his own grave. A lord was equivalent to 50 special elites or 5 chieftains. However, although a lord provided the most time, it was also the most difficult monster to take down. Moreover, if he had to face more than one lord simultaneously, the difficulty of the challenge would increase manifold. Yet, if he did not challenge high-ranking monsters, he would not have enough time to explore the World Summit. While standing on the massive altar, Feng pondered for a very long time. System: you have 1 minute to consider. Please make your decision as soon as possible. Chapter 603 S Rank. Chapter 603 S Rank. Time passed quickly, and Feng's head was spinning. This was a test meant to determine a player's understanding of themselves and their abilities. If a player overestimated their strength and skills, they might bring about their own deaths due to choosing monsters that were too strong. On the other hand, if they chose monsters that were overly weak, they might fail their quest due to having insufficient time. In other words, the more a player understood of their own strength, the more benefits they could obtain through this test. With berserk skills such as Heavenly Dragon's Power and Blade Liberation, although it was possible for Feng to kill a lord of the same level, the same did not true for a group of lords. Hence, Feng could not make this decision lightly. System: you have 30 seconds to consider. Please make your decision as soon as possible. I choose 1 lord and 9 chieftains, Feng said, finally deciding. System: opponents confirmed. Based on the analysis of your combat power, this test's difficulty is A rank. Once victorious, you will obtain a key that can be used to open shrine gates that are dark gold rank or lower. Do you wish to confirm your choice? Dark gold rank? Feng immediately felt that something was amiss. Hurriedly, he said, I wish to change my selection to 2 lords and 8 chieftains. His quest was epic rank. It was clear that he would not be able to obtain the Bible of Darkness if he could only visit dark gold shrines. He needed to be able to enter epic shrines. Otherwise, even if he won this battle, he would still fail his quest. System: opponents confirmed. Based on the analysis of your combat power, this test's difficulty is A rank. Once victorious, you will obtain a key that can be used to open shrine gates that are dark gold rank or lower. Do you wish to confirm your choice? Crap. Even with 2 lords, it still hasn't reached S rank? Feng inwardly cursed. Change my selection to 3 lords and 7 chieftains. Feng should be at his limit with 2 lords. There was only a 50% chance that he would emerge victorious from such a battle. If he faced 3 lords, based on his estimations, his success rate would be less than 20%. System: opponents confirmed. Based on the analysis of your combat power, this test's difficulty is S rank. Once victorious, you will obtain a key that can be used to open shrine gates that are epic rank or lower. Do you wish to confirm your choice? Confirm! Shifeng shouted, gritting his teeth. Hopefully, the lineup of these lords won't be too powerful. A moment later, 10 monsters appeared before Shifeng on the altar. 3 of them were lords, and 7 were chieftains. All 10 monsters were combat puppets of the same shape and size as an average player. In terms of attributes, however, they were leaps and bounds above Shifeng. Golden Puppet, Lord Rank. Level 32. HP 1, 600, 000/1, 600, 000. Silver Puppet, Chieftain Rank. Level 32. HP 550, 000/550, 000. Good, my luck isn't that rotten after all. These puppets are all melees, and their HPs are quite low as well. I shouldn't have too many issues if I fight them from a distance. Shifeng released a sigh of relief. When the battle started, the 10 puppets began moving. Step by step, they slowly approached Shifeng, lacking the dexterity of a living creature. However, Shifeng did not dare to be careless. Immediately, he activated Heavenly Dragon's power, increasing his strength by 100% and defense and HP by 300%. Instantly, Shifeng's HP broke through the 30,000 threshold. Sure enough, lords were not that easy to deal with. The instant Shifeng activated Heavenly Dragon's power, the combat puppets dashed towards him, much faster than an ordinary chieftain and lord. The 10 combat puppets crossed the distance of 50 yards in the blink of an eye. The first to attack were the silver puppets, who thrust their spears at Shifeng. Following closely, the golden puppets unsheathed the twin swords slung over their backs. Without hesitation, Shifeng activated the Ice Blue Devil Flame and Black Emperor, holding nothing back. Deep blue flames covered Shifeng's entire body, raising his fire and ice damage by 40%. Shifeng then used Skywheel Sword, sealing the movements of all 10 combat puppets within a fixed perimeter. He followed up with a firestorm. Ice blue flames devoured the 10 combat puppets, dealing over -20,000 damage, or -40,000 damage with a critical hit, to all 10 puppets every second for 5 seconds. When the spell's duration ended, the 10 combat puppets had received over -100,000 damage each. Shifeng fully displayed the devastating might of the large-scale destruction spell. Meanwhile, Shifeng collected 30 stacks of death aura from this single attack. I'll get rid of one of you first. Shifeng then took out a bottle of 100-berry wine from his bag, drinking it. Instantly, his compatibility rate with his sword soared. Moving towards a silver puppet with less than 300,000 HP remaining, he used Phantom Kill, followed by Flame Burst. 24 consecutive strikes. 24 swords of light illuminated the altar. The silver puppet faded out of existence. Although Shifeng killed 1 silver puppet, the remaining 6 silver puppets and 3 golden puppets caught him in a pincer attack. With his most powerful burst skill exhausted, Shifeng used Thunder Flame Explosion to slow the remaining combat puppets, as well as deal over -10,000 damage to each. Due to his compatibility rate rising, he managed to achieve a 95% completion rate on Thunder Flame Explosion, reducing the movement speed of these combat puppets for over 10 seconds. Following which, he switched to the Aura of Wind, turning around and fleeing with his doppelganger. Facing 2 lords at the same time was already enough to overwhelm Shifeng, not to mention 3 lords and 6 chieftains simultaneously. With the Aura of Wind's movement speed increase and Thunder Flame Explosion's movement speed reduction, the silver puppets were unable to catch up with Shifeng. As for the golden puppets, although their speed allowed them to keep up with Shifeng, their occasional attacks caused their speed to drop sharply as well. As a result, it became impossible for them to surround Shifeng. Meanwhile, Shifeng activated 9 Dragon Slash, the 12 Abyssal Blade Phantoms constantly assaulting the distant silver puppets. From time to time, Shifeng would also attack with the Blazing Meteor. Although damage from his ranged attacks caused was not as high as the Abyssal Blade, each attack still dealt around -2,000 to -3,000 damage. Occasionally, Shurfeng would also use Thundering Flash to inflict the damage amplification effect on the remaining 9 combat puppets. Shurfeng also constantly expended the death auras he accumulated to reduce the cooldown of Thunder Flame Explosion, Thundering Flash, and other skills. Among them, he reduced the cooldown of Flame Burst the most. In such a way, Shurfeng reduced the movement speed of all combat puppets while exterminating the silver puppets. From time to time, he would use Flame Burst to instant kill a silver puppet. In less than 2 minutes, Shurfeng had annihilated all of the silver puppets. Only 3 golden puppets remained. However, these 3 golden puppets were inseparable. Shurfeng could not find a chance to take them on one-on-one. Moreover, even though so much time had passed since the battle began, the 3 golden puppets were still at full HP thanks to their battle recovery. Even when Shurfeng activated Wind Rider and managed to single out one of the golden puppets with his overwhelming speed, the remaining 2 would quickly catch up. As a result, Shurfeng could only land a few hits before he was forced to retreat. This is troublesome. Although the golden puppets do not have any skills, the 3 of them are like a single entity, attacking and defending as one. Shurfeng, who hovered in the air, frowned at the 3 golden puppets. The golden puppets were too powerful when working together. Moreover, the heavenly dragon's power's duration would end soon. At that time, even a battle of attrition would be difficult against the 3 golden puppets. "Do I have no other choice?" Shurfeng muttered as he reluctantly retrieved an aqua-blue magic scroll from his bag. This was his greatest trump card, one that he never thought of using. Watching the remaining seconds of the heavenly dragon's power's duration tick by, Shurfeng had no choice but to unfurl the aqua-blue magic scroll. Chapter 604 Time is Money. Chapter 604 Time is Money. Shurfeng had prepared extensively to obtain the Bible of Darkness. His preparations included this aqua-blue magic scroll. Although lords were powerful, in the end, they were only Tier 2 monsters. It was only their high HP and damage, which were far superior to ordinary players, that made them so difficult to deal with. When Shurfeng activated Heavenly Dragon's power, his attributes were no longer below that of a lord of the same level. With his superior dodging techniques and powerful skills, he could easily defeat a lord of the same level. However, with 3 golden puppets working seamlessly together, all Shurfeng could do was dodge. As Shurfeng unfurled the aqua-blue magic scroll, the surrounding water mana surged towards the paper. In a moment, the mana formed a massive, 6-star magic array. "Go!" Shurfeng pointed at the 3 golden puppets. Suddenly, water surged from the 6-star magic array and swept over the bodies of the 3 golden puppets. In the blink of an eye, a small lake formed within an area of 50 yards. Although the water only reached the golden puppets' knees, the lake itself seemed to possess life as it formed dozens of water whips to bind the 3 lords. The 3 golden puppets desperately struggled to break free of these water whips. Facing a lord's power, these water whips snapped easily. However, the whips were seemingly endless. The moment one broke, another would immediately rise from the lake to take its place. As a result, it became extremely difficult for these golden puppets to move. "Give it up. You guys are only lords. Against a Tier 2 domain skill, Binding Current, you don't stand a chance," Shurfeng growled, annoyed at the loss of the Tier 2 magic scroll. Zero Wing possessed quite a few Tier 2 magic scrolls. Yet, even among them, Binding Current was somewhat special. Binding Current was a domain skill, far rarer than even large-scale destruction spells. Although the skill did not have any attack power, it was capable of restricting enemies. Shurfeng only possessed one such magic scroll. Once it was used, it would be very difficult to obtain another. Binding Current had a duration of 10 minutes. During these 10 minutes, all enemies within the domain would be bound by water currents, their movements greatly affected. Even Lord's strength would be significantly restricted while inside this domain. "Die!" Shurfeng immediately struck a golden puppet. With the endless currents, the 3 golden puppets could no longer work in sync. This allowed Shurfeng to focus his attacks on a single golden puppet safely. Chop! Thunder Flame Explosion! Thundering Flash! Shifeng used one skill after another on the golden puppet. Due to Black Emperor, Shifeng could decrease his skill's cooldown significantly. Shifeng's chop was practically without a cooldown. In addition, Shifeng the bottle of 100 berry wine allowed his skill completion rates to remain above 95%. Every time Shifeng used chop, he obliterated nearly 30,000 HP from the golden puppet. As a result, the golden puppet's 1,600,000 HP decreased at a rate visible to the naked eye. When the golden puppet's HP fell to 30%, Shifeng suddenly sensed danger. Hurriedly, he retreated by several steps. Boom! After backing up, a powerful impact slammed into Shifeng, sending him flying over a dozen yards backward. This is absolute domain! Shifeng was shocked. At this moment, a faint gray membrane surrounded the golden puppet with only 30% of its HP remaining. When the countless water whips collided with his gray membrane, they were immediately repelled, unable to enter the domain. Without the currents binding it, the golden puppet recovered its speed fully. In the blink of an eye, the golden puppet arrived before Shifeng and brandished its twin swords. The puppet's swords were like whips as they viciously assailed Shifeng. Just in time. Shifeng involuntarily smiled. As if he had long since seen through the golden puppet's intentions, he nimbly bent his body, allowing the whip-like swords to move over his body unhindered. The puppet's swords slid against Shifeng's body as they passed. However, they did not truly connect with Shifeng. Flowing Water Realm. Shifeng was like flowing water as he received the golden puppet's barrage, evading the countless sword lights smoothly. He would also occasionally strike back at the golden puppet, his attacks targeting the monster's joints. If the puppet were capable of using any other skills, Shifeng might really be in a predicament. However, since it could only use Absolute Domain, a skill that dispelled all control skills targeting its user, the golden puppet was no threat at all. In terms of power, he was not one bit inferior to a lord. As for speed, although he was slower than the golden puppet, he could make up for the gap with his dodging techniques. Moreover, even in the event that dodging was not possible, he could confront the puppet directly. He was not afraid of facing the lord in melee combat. After roughly a dozen seconds, Shifeng finally defeated one of the golden puppets. With the death of one golden puppet, Shifeng's concerns had gone out the window. His chances of victory instantly increased to more than 50%. He then proceeded to deal with the second golden puppet. When Heavenly Dragon's power's duration finally ended, Shifeng used the Tier 2 magic scroll, Scorching Saber, to finish off the second golden puppet. Shifeng glanced at Flame Burst's cooldown before shifting his gaze towards the final golden puppet. Smiling faintly, he muttered, "I can finally end this." After roughly 2 minutes of exhausting battle, Shifeng finally managed to wear down the golden puppet's HP to 1 million. Not wanting to waste any more time, Shifeng activated Blade Liberation, increasing both his strength and agility attributes by 90%. He then proceeded to torture the last golden puppet to death. Compared to when he had activated Heavenly Dragon's power, his attacks dealt slightly less damage. However, due to his increased attack speed, his total damage was higher than before. When the golden puppet was about to activate its absolute domain, Shifeng activated his ultimate skills, Flame Burst and Dragon Breath, killing the golden puppet, which only had 30% HP remaining, instantly. When the battle ended, the sound of a system notification rang out by Shifeng's ears. System, you have completed the S-rank difficulty test. Rewarding Epic Shrine Key. You have received 2,200 minutes. After the test ended, Shifeng did not rush towards the mountain. Instead, he chose to rest for a moment. When Blade Liberation ended, he would enter a weakened state for 3 minutes. Moreover, he had no idea of what to expect on the mountain. Since he had already qualified to enter the World Summit, and was not in a hurry, he could take the chance to recover his mental state. After all, high-intensity battles were very taxing on the mind. He could also take this opportunity to wait for the Heavenly Dragon's power's cooldown to end. This test alone has forced me to use so many of my hidden cards. Just what awaits me on the mountain? Feng could not help but shudder whenever he recalled the Tier 5 fallen angel that had appeared before him. 3 hours passed quickly. Holding the purple gold key, Feng arrived before the gates to the world summit. The moment Feng set foot on the world summit, the time he had obtained through the test began to count down. No monsters? Feng muttered, confused. He was not in a hurry. Examining his surroundings, other than the 10-meter-tall shrines, nothing hindered his path. Feng then activated Windwalk and ran towards the nearest 10-meter-tall shrine. The stone doors in front of the dazzling golden shrine were shut tightly. When Feng touched the stone doors, the sound of a system notification reached his ears. System, Epic Shrine Key detected. You are qualified to open the doors of this bronze shrine. Do you wish to spend 50 minutes to open them? Crap! Opening the shrines requires time? Originally, Feng thought he would have sufficient time to search for the Bible of Darkness. With this new development, however, that notion had changed. However, Feng had no idea as to what was inside these shrines. He needed a better understanding so that he could face any future developments. Open the doors! Feng said, gritting his teeth. Chapter 605 Player's Paradise. Chapter 605 Player's Paradise. After Feng confirmed his decision, the heavy stone doors slowly parted. Meanwhile, Feng's remaining time in the World Summit instantly decreased by 50 minutes. When he entered the shrine, he was greeted by a staircase that led to the top of the shrine. Engraved runes and pictures decorated the staircase's walls. Among them, there were even images of gods before the Great Destruction. Feng ascended the shrine's staircase, step by step. In the beginning, Feng had not felt anything out of the ordinary. However, by the time he was halfway to the top, he felt something off. Why has the gravity here increased? Feng's physical control was quite strong. As he took another step up, he felt the gravity increase by 10%. Although the gravity had only increased from 1 to 1 g, this small change would affect his skill completion rates, resulting in a decrease in his combat power. However, since Feng had already entered the shrine, he had no intentions of leaving. If he could not even overcome a single bronze shrine, obtaining the Bible of Darkness would be a pipe dream. Feng continued to ascend, step by step. However, he was no longer as fast as before, as with every 10 steps, the gravity increased. And with each change, Feng needed some time to adapt. By the time Feng reached the top of the shrine, the gravity had shifted to 2.4 g. Exposed to such an intense shift, even Feng was significantly affected. The room at the top of the shrine was not large. It was roughly the size of a basketball court. Aside from a black stone coffin in the room's center, the area was empty. Feng approached the center of the room. When he was 10 yards away from the stone coffin, golden runes suddenly emerged on its black surface. A moment later, a golden magic array began to expand from the stone coffin, enveloping Feng with it. A barrier? Feng glanced at his surroundings. Golden, translucent walls enclosed the area around him, trapping him with the stone coffin. Just as Feng considered his escape options, a semi-transparent figure materialized inside the barrier. This figure was actually Feng himself. Both the figure's appearance and apparel were exactly like his own. Shrine Guard. Level 32. HP 20,000/20,000. Am I supposed to defeat him? Feng frowned at the Shrine Guard, his expression becoming somewhat solemn. Feng only required one critical hit to finish off the Shrine Guard's 20,000 HP. However, he did not dare to casually approach the Shrine Guard because, currently, his intuition warned him that, should he approach the guard, only death awaited him. Feng was a player that was capable of defeating a lord by himself, yet, against this Shrine Guard, who only had 20,000 HP, he was utterly helpless. Are you too scared to approach me? The Shrine Guard asked, laughing. Feng could not help his shock when he heard the Shrine Guard's human-like speech and behavior. In his memories, only high-tiered NPCs were capable of such performances. He had never heard of a common monster behaving like this. It was obvious that the shrine guard was an extraordinary existence. I don't have a death wish. Shifeng shook his head, growing more certain of his intuition's warning. Not bad. You have actually discerned the gap in strength between us. However, rest assured, since you have already made it here, there is no danger. On the contrary, I have a reward for you, the shrine guard said, laughing. Reward? What kind of reward? Shifeng did not think that an NPC would trick him, and there was no need to do so. This NPC was certainly far stronger than himself. The shrine guard could simply kill him if he wanted to. I will help you become stronger, the shrine guard then explained. I can offer you guidance on one swordsman's skill. How much you learn depends on you, of course. However, you don't have much time left. You only have 49 minutes remaining. Guidance on a swordsman's skill. Shifeng was surprised. When he thought back to the price required to enter the bronze shrine, he immediately understood. Hurriedly, he said, I would like you to give me pointers on chop. Shifeng had plenty of swordsman's skills. However, there were some he used frequently, and some he only used occasionally. Among them, he used chop most often. Although his magic weapon had allowed his skill completion rate to rise significantly, he was still far from achieving a 100% skill completion rate. You've made a wise decision. Watch me carefully, then. The shrine guard nodded. He then began to flow through the motions of chop. The shrine guard's body leaned forward and swung the abyssal blade in his hand. The abyssal blade then began to blur. In the next moment, it was as if the space in front of the shrine guard broke as a faint spatial crack appeared. The shrine guard's chop was completely different than Shifeng's. How is this possible? Shifeng was at a loss for words. His skill completion rate with chop was over 95%, and he was extremely close to reaching perfection. However, whenever he used chop, it always appeared in the form of 3 sword lights resembling full moons that gathered at a single point. However, these 3 sword lights did not appear when the shrine guard used chop. From the beginning, there had only been a single sword light. Moreover, the shrine guard's swing had not been particularly fast, so Shifeng could see the skill being executed very clearly. However, the most frightening aspect was the power the shrine guard's chop had displayed. Shifeng could sense that the shrine guard's strength and constitution and his own were exactly the same. The only difference was that the shrine guard had slightly more HP. Yet, the shrine guard's chop could tear apart space itself. Although the spatial crack that had formed seemed very small, the might it contained was sufficient to kill him instantly. Despite the shrine guard's speed and power being ordinary, he was actually able to display such frightening power. Confused? The shrine guard asked, smiling. Shifeng nodded and admitted shamelessly. No matter what was said or done, he was a top-tier expert in God's domain who had reached the flowing water realm. Although he still could not compete with those apex experts in the past, he was not that far away from reaching their level. Yet, the chop the shrine guard had executed shattered his conception of the skill known as chop. If you don't understand, I will display the skill a few more times. You can also experience it for yourself. Rest assured, while inside this barrier, you will not receive any damage. The shrine guard spoke like a teacher who guided his student carefully. Hearing this, Shifeng quickly sought the shrine guard's guidance. If one wished to improve on their techniques, the fastest way to do so was through actual combat. Previously, he had kept a distance between himself and the shrine guard, worried that the NPC would kill him. Now that he knew the NPC intended to help him improve his ability with the skill, he would not hold back. Immediately, he displayed his best chop and began battling the shrine guard. Since Shifeng attacked him, the shrine guard replied with a chop of his own. When the 2 swords collided, sparks flew into the air around them. Pun! In one moment, Shifeng sent a chop at the shrine guard, and in the next moment, his body left an imprint on the barrier's wall. There was even a faint spatial crack lingering in Shifeng's original position. Is this a super-perfect skill? Shifeng stared at the shrine guard with a stupefied expression. His mind replayed the shrine guard's sword swing. Regarding speed, Sherfone was definitely the victor. Moreover, he had prepared to dodge the NPC's attack beforehand. However, before he had any chance to dodge, the shrine guard's sword had collided with his own. He instantly felt a tremendous power flow into his hand. In the next moment, he had been thrown backward. Sherfone was still badly shaken by the shrine guard's attack. Fortunately, this was only a lecture. Otherwise, the NPC's attack might have really killed him. He and the shrine guard were worlds apart from each other. Perfect? The shrine guard laughed. Nothing is perfect in this world. It is only because your vision is limited, and you are confined to your own world. Nothing is perfect? Sherfone thought about the skill completion rate's limit of 100%. Yet the shrine guard had said that nothing was perfect. Could the skill completion rate possibly exceed 100%? The more Sherfone thought about it, the more he felt it was possible. Otherwise, why would his chop, which neared a 100% completion rate, be so inferior to the shrine guard's? Following which, Sherfone faced off against the shrine guard again and again. Although every exchange ended in Sherfeng's utter defeat, the more Sherfone fought, the more his excitement grew. He felt as if he had caught onto something that he had never noticed before. He had placed too much importance on his body, trying too hard to replicate a skill's template motions that had been provided by the system. He had forgotten to think outside of the box. As Sherfone traded blows with the shrine guard, his skill completion rate continued to rise. 96%. 97%. 98%. It should feel like. Sherfone leaned forward. He no longer pursued ultimate speed as he swung his sword along the air's resistance. Suddenly, a spatial crack appeared before him. Chop's skill completion rate reached 101%. Chapter 606 Epic Shrine. Chapter 606 Epic Shrine. This is a really wonderful feeling. When Sherfone looked at the black fissure before him, he could not help but recall the sensation he felt when he drew his sword before. Unfortunately, he had only achieved this super-perfect completion rate accidentally. Trying to grasp this feeling was akin to trying to catch a dream. Just as Sherfone was about to commence another bout with the shrine guard, the sound of a system notification suddenly entered his ears. System. Active duration of the shrine has ended. Player will be sent out of the shrine in 3 seconds. Time's up already? Sherfone could not help his surprise. He felt as if he had fought against the shrine guard for only a short while. He still had many questions he wished to gain answers to. Yet, before he realized it, 50 minutes had already elapsed. By the time Sherfone snapped out of his daze, he was already back outside the gates of the bronze shrine. Sherfone still wanted to enter the shrine again. However, the system notified him that he had already opened this shrine once before and that he would have to wait another 7 days before he could open it again. Truly a pity. If I were to practice there for a few more hours, I might be able to grab a hold of that feeling, Sherfone silently lamented. In God's domain, whether it be a player's combat techniques or skill usage, both were learned through self-experimentation. There was no teacher to guide players on these topics. The system only provided a holographic video of the template motions of a skill. The rest was up to the players themselves to experiment and practice. Having someone specially teaching them how to use their skills was definitely a heaven-sent opportunity. After all, having a guide was far more efficient than groping for answers in the dark. The learning speed would definitely be more than 10 times faster. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many players who couldn't achieve a 100% skill completion rate. I wonder what kind of rewards the other shrines have. Expectations welled up inside Sherfone. Just a single bronze shrine had provided him with such a guidance reward. What would the mysterious iron, secret silver, fine gold, dark gold, and epic ranked shrines have in store for him? Thinking up to this point, Sherfone no longer wasted any more time. He immediately activated Windwalk and dashed towards the peak of the world's summit. Sherfone could determine the rank of a shrine based on its location on the world's summit. The higher the rank of a shrine, the closer to the pinnacle it lay. However, the world's summit was simply too massive. It was many times larger than White River City. Despite continually alternating between Windwalk, Windrider, and Speed Scrolls, Sherfong had reached only the middle section of the world's summit after running for 3 full hours. He still couldn't see the peak of the mountain from where he stood. On the other hand, the shrines at the foot of the mountain were no more than little dots in his eyes now. I have managed to reach the area of the fine gold shrines only after 3 hours. That's 6 special elite kills gone. Even if an expert player were to come here, they would not be able to obtain the reward of the fine gold shrines. Sherfong had tried checking one of the fine gold shrines earlier, and it required him to spend 200 minutes just to open it. It should be known that the current elite players of God's domain were only capable of contending against an elite monster of the same level, while ordinary experts were capable of opposing up to a special elite of the same level. Only first-rate experts could fight a chieftain of the same level. As for top-tier experts, they were capable of contending against a lord of the same level. In order to arrive at this place and open the doors of a fine gold shrine, a player would need to defeat 2 chieftains and 8 special elites, obtaining 440 minutes, at the very least. In other words, an extremely powerful first-rate expert would barely be able to open the doors of a fine gold shrine and obtain the rewards stored within it. I have only reached the middle section of the mountain. Just how long do I have to continue running to reach the epic rank section? Sherfong grew somewhat worried. Sherfong discovered that the distance between shrines also grew wider the further up he went. He had only reached the edge of the fine gold shrine area right now. He still had to traverse the dark gold area to arrive at the epic area. He also had to spend time searching for the right epic shrine. Moreover, he had obtained the epic shrine key by the skin of his teeth. He had no idea how much time was required to open the doors of an epic shrine. In the off chance that he did not have enough. This place really is damnable. I can't use the aura of space's spatial movement here. Only the aura of wind's speed increase and Wind Rider are of some help. The rules of the World Summit were thoroughly exasperating. If Sherfong could use spatial movement here, he could travel a distance of 400,000 yards in just 1 second, saving him hours in travel time. Time passed by quickly. After running for another 5 hours, Sherfong finally arrived before a shrine that was over 300 meters in height. The shrines around this area were completely different from the ones he had seen before. "This is an epic shrine," Sherfong muttered as he looked at the mountain-like shrine. The shrines he encountered before were all inanimate objects. On the other hand, the epic shrines here had frightening auras. Sherfong even began to wonder whether terrifying monsters lived in these shrines. Done admiring the shrine before him, Sherfong walked up and touched its doors. System: Epic Shrine Key detected. You are qualified to open the doors of the epic shrine. Do you wish to spend 1,000 minutes to open them? 1,000 minutes? Sherfong breathed out a sigh of relief. I still have slightly more than 1,600 minutes right now. I will have plenty of time remaining even after I open an epic shrine. I should be able to locate the shrine storing the Bible of Darkness within 600 minutes. The World Summit had a large number of shrines, and the same held true even for epic shrines. Sherfong counted 9 epic shrines just within his range of vision. There were also plenty more up above. He guessed that the total number of epic shrines on the World Summit exceeded 100. These shrines were different from each other. There was a huge difference just in terms of the elemental mana surrounding these shrines. Some shrines released bright and dazzling elemental mana, and others released flaming elemental mana. Even shrines that released the same type of mana would have different images engraved on their doors, images of angels, demons, and many other races. Some shrine doors even depicted gods. Hence, Sherfong would not have difficulty looking for the shrine that contained the Bible of Darkness, so long as he had sufficient time. The Bible of Darkness is a treasure of the demon race. It should be stored in one of the demonic shrines of the darkness element. Although Sherfong had little understanding of the World Summit, he knew quite a lot regarding mana. A curse was categorized as a darkness skill. Since it was a great demon who had cursed him, the great demon knew how to cast darkness spells. This meant that the Bible of Darkness had to be related to a shrine of the darkness element. With a target in mind, Sherfone quickly began his search. Very easily, he had managed to locate 5 darkness shrines. Among them, only 2 belonged to the demon race. Meanwhile, of these 2 shrines, one belonged to the Lord of Destruction, while the other belonged to the Lord of Nightmares. The Bible of Darkness was a descriptive record of all demons written by the Lord of Destruction. Rumor had it that as long as one managed to control the Bible of Darkness, they would become the Lord of Demons, with all demons obedient to their commands. Without hesitation, Sherfone opened the Lord of Destruction's shrine. When the black stone doors parted, an ancient aura washed over him. Sherfone could feel the origin of destruction contained within this aura. The pressure he felt coming from within the shrine was far more powerful than what he had felt from the Tier 5 fallen angel he encountered before. Amazing! It is only a shrine. There is clearly no living being inside, yet it gives off such an overwhelming pressure. As expected of the Lord of Destruction's shrine, Sherfone exclaimed. Heavenly Dragon's power, activate! The immense pressure made even walking a difficult task for Sherfone. However, after activating Heavenly Dragon's power, the weight pressing down on him lessened significantly. He was then able to enter the shrine with relative ease. Chapter 607 Magic Device. Chapter 607 Magic Device. The moment Sherfone stepped into the shrine, it was as if he had arrived in another world. He could hear the chirping of birds and smell the fragrance of flowers. Verdant trees and grass filled his vision. Instead of a shrine, this place looked more like a garden. Fallen Angel! Inside the garden, Sherfone immediately discovered the fallen angel that had killed him previously. 3 pairs of pitch-black wings, a perfect, enchanting body, long and slender legs, as well as that jade-white skin and flawless face. Of all the women Sherfone knew, only the great divine official Charlene was a match for this fallen angel. Any other woman standing before her would simply pale in comparison. Human, you sure are fast. The Tier 5 fallen angel giggled as she looked at Sherfone with her aquamarine eyes. You adventurers are truly blessed by the heavens, being born with an immortal soul. Even we would find it difficult to thoroughly kill you adventurers. Even until now, Sherfone still got chills whenever he thought back to how the fallen angel had killed him instantly. Most likely, only a few players throughout the entire God's domain could rival that near-perfect combat technique. If he had not known that only rewards, and no punishments, awaited him inside these shrines, he would have long since fled this shrine. My name is Serene. Come over. You entered the World Summit normally this time, so I won't kill you. Serene laughed as she beckoned Sherfone with her hand. Since you've managed to make it to this place, it shows that you indeed possess some ability. I can give you 2 options. 2 options? Sherfone asked curiously. Though I say options, in reality, they are just 2 reward methods. Serene nodded lightly. The first option is obtaining the Bible of Darkness that is stored in this place directly. The second option is undertaking a small test. Through the second option, you will not only obtain the Bible of Darkness but also have a chance to win these items. Serene waved her hand lightly. Suddenly, 3 rainbow treasure chests appeared in midair. The first rainbow treasure chest contained a large number of soul crystals. A simple glance told Sherfone that there were over 100 crystals at the very minimum. In the dark den, the soul crystal was the foundation of all development. A sudden infusion of more than 100 soul crystals would definitely increase a shelter's strength significantly. The second rainbow treasure chest contained a black stone tablet that looked similar to the Chapter of Darkness. However, the name displayed was Chapter of Shelter. It could be used to immediately promote a shelter by a single rank, up to a maximum of large shelter. There's such a good item available as well? Sure enough, the rewards of an epic shrine are astonishing. Sherfone grew very excited when he saw these 2 rewards. Promoting the shelters found inside the dark den was extremely difficult. Besides the astronomical number of soul crystals required, players also needed to complete a series of quests in order to promote a shelter. The manpower and resources necessary to do so were extremely daunting. Even the shelter at District 1 had yet to be promoted to a large shelter until now. One could just imagine how difficult a feat it was. Only a shelter supported by a large guild was capable of becoming a large shelter after amassing all the resources collected by the multiple shelters controlled by said guild. Once he obtained the chapter of shelter, he could immediately upgrade a medium shelter to a large shelter. This would be of immense help for District 1's shelter, which was under Zero Wing's control. However, when Serena opened the third rainbow treasure chest, Shifeng was thoroughly stupefied. Magic device forging design! Shifeng's eyes turned bloodshot as he looked at the dilapidated design inside the treasure chest. He could not help but wish he could snatch it up right away. Oh? I did not think that a human like you would know about this item. Since you know about magic devices, then you must know what a magic device forging design represents. Its value is only slightly lower than the Bible of Darknesses. You humans, however, would probably appraise the design more highly. The fallen angel Serena smiled in satisfaction upon seeing Shifeng's reaction. Say it then. Which reward do you choose? At these words, Shifeng fell silent. A product of God's domain's magical civilization when it was at its peak, the magic device represented the pinnacle of alchemy, forging, and engineering combined, as well as the end of the era of the gods. Even the lowest-ranked bronze magic device boosted a player's strength to a whole new level, not to mention a magic device forging design. Even the lowest-ranked bronze magic device forging design could provoke a war between guilds. In the past, when a mysterious iron magic device forging design had appeared, over a dozen countries and more than 100 guilds had fought over it. Multiple super guilds had also participated. The death toll for that war was innumerable. A rough estimation had pegged it at 5 million. In the end, a super guild had emerged victorious. As for Shadow, which had been a second-rate guild back then, it had not dared to even participate in the war. It could only stand on the sidelines and watch. Now that a magic device forging design appeared right in front of him, how could Shifeng not grow excited? Magic devices were similar to the mana armor kits. In the magic device's case, however, it did not increase any basic attributes. Instead, it was mounted on a weapon to increase the weapon's strength. Every weapon could only mount one magic device. After God's domain underwent its third evolution, whether it was a battle against players or against monsters, an injury would reduce a player's combat power. And while players could rely on heals to recover from their injuries, the deterioration of their weapons was inevitable. It was especially true when players fought against high-ranking monsters. Unless one's weapon was of high quality, players would have great difficulty injuring a lord and reducing its combat power since lords had skin that was as hard as steel. Meanwhile, a magic device could be used to strengthen a weapon. Not only could it make a weapon sharper, but it could also bestow special effects such as reduced weight, increased weight, hardness, mirage, paralysis, and other effects that could improve a player's combat power significantly. Most importantly, magic devices were not consumable items. Like inlaid gemstones, they could be taken off the weapons they were mounted on. Whether it was a level 1 common weapon or a level 200 epic weapon, players could freely transfer their magic devices between them. This was the reason why players were so attracted to magic devices. However, magic devices were extremely difficult to produce, hence, production volumes were very low. Even after reaching level 100, most players still did not have their own magic devices. In the past, as the guild leader of a second-rate guild, Shifeng owned only a mysterious iron magic device, even after he was over level 100. As for other independent experts, they possessed only bronze magic devices. If he could obtain a magic device forging design right now, it would definitely become one of Zero Wing's trump cards. Have you come to a decision? Serena asked, smiling as she flourished the magic device forging design in her hand. Time waits for no one. You only have 3 minutes to decide. If you do not give me an answer, I will take it as you picking the first option, and you may leave once you obtain the Bible of Darkness. To hell with it. Shifeng looked at the fallen angel, a passionate flame burning in his heart. I choose the second option. Both the chapter of shelter and the magic device forging design were items that were not easily acquired. The difficulty of obtaining the magic device forging design was even above that for an epic item. Otherwise, magic devices wouldn't have been so rare in the past. Good. I knew you were a smart man. Let's begin, then. Serena smiled in satisfaction. She then waved her hand. The entire garden promptly vanished, and replacing it was a volcanic hell. Molten magma surrounded a 40-yard area of solid ground. The ambient temperature was scorching hot. Any ordinary player would most likely broil to death slowly. Only someone like Sherfong, who possessed high fire resistance, could stay in this place for long periods of time. Meanwhile, the gravity here had also increased to 3G, which would greatly affect a player's mobility. Come then. If you can defeat me, you win, Serena said, smiling as she looked down at Sherfong from midair. Chapter 608 Tier 2 Taboo Skill. Chapter 608 Tier 2 Taboo Skill. Originally, Serena had anticipated seeing a look of horror on Sherfeng's face. However, even after she had revealed the contents of the test, Sherfong did not evince any shock. On the contrary, it seemed as if he felt that the test was totally reasonable. Don't you feel surprised that the final test actually requires you to defeat me? Serena asked, a perplexed expression on her face as she looked at Sherfong. A Tier 1 human against a Tier 5 fallen angel. With such a massive gap, even a person with a stable mentality would feel despair. And if not despair, then at the very least anger, as this was obviously not a fair contest. Yet Sherfong remained unfazed by this revelation, so how could she not be surprised? Since the rewards are so bountiful, I naturally prepared for the worst. Not to mention, I really don't have a choice, do I? Sherfong laughed, a helpless smile on his face. There were no free lunches in God's domain. Not to mention, the rewards of the test were of such a frightening caliber. It seems that you understand the rules of the world quite well, so it wasn't just luck that prompted you to pick the second option. Serena squinted her aquamarine eyes slightly as she looked at Sherfong. At this moment, she no longer looked down at the human before her. Curling her blood-red lips into a seductive smile, she continued. If you had chosen the first option, then the Bible of Darkness you would have received would have been a replica. As for the second option, while you may fail the test, you will still obtain the real Bible of Darkness regardless. Although Sherfong had guessed that this was the case, he inwardly felt relieved to hear these words directly from the fallen angel herself. When all was said and done, the Bible of Darkness was a treasure left behind by the Lord of Destruction. How could it possibly be that easy for players to acquire it? Since you are already clear on the situation, I will explain the rules of the test. Serena raised her brows slightly and continued in a low tone. The rules are very simple. You will not die while inside this area. Both our strengths will also be suppressed to Tier 1. It will be your win as long as you are able to defeat me in the remaining time you possess. Both suppressed to the standard of a Tier 1. Sherfong frowned. Although both their strengths would be suppressed to the standard of a Tier 1 class in the upcoming test, fallen angels were higher beings. Not only were they born much stronger than other beings, but they also wielded many more skills. Even at Tier 1, Serena's combat power would most likely be at the peak of an ordinary Tier 2 class or above. She was stronger than even a High Lord of the same level. There was actually a possibility that her combat power approached that of a Great Lord. If there are no problems, you may begin attacking as much as you want. Serena smiled faintly as she sent Sherfong a teasing look. Rest assured, I'll make sure to hold back plenty. I also won't use any Tier 3 or Tier 4 skills. Despite Serena's reassurance, Sherfong had no intention of attacking her just yet. Even without using Tier 3 or Tier 4 skills, a Tier 1 fallen angel can still kill me easily using Tier 2 skills. He smiled bitterly as he took in Serena's leisurely attitude. Sherfong had a very clear understanding of his own strength. Although he had grasped plenty of powerful skills, they were all Tier 1 skills. As for Tier 2 magic scrolls, while he had quite a few on him right now, his opponent had Tier 2 skills, which she could use indefinitely. The only trump card he had was twofold Berserk. If he activated Heavenly Dragon's power and Blade Liberation simultaneously, he would gain the ability to contend against the High Lord for a short period of time. However, engaging a Tier 1 Fallen Angel in melee combat was simply suicidal. I have close to 10 hours left. It would be pointless to charge into battle right now. My only option is to wait for the cooldown of Dragon's power to end. Sherfong was in no hurry. He then sat on the ground, resting as he quietly observed the fallen angel before him. Earlier, when he was entering the shrine, he was forced to use Heavenly Dragon's power to resist the intense pressure. If he fought Serene, a fallen angel who had the attributes of a High Lord, without twofold berserk, he would just be seeking his own death. Fortunately, the condition to clear the test was only to defeat Serene, not to kill her. There was a massive difference between these two conditions. Defeat meant that he was only required to cause a certain amount of damage to Serene. After all, even if Serene simply stood still and allowed him to attack her freely, he would not be able to kill her within 20 seconds. Currently, although Serene was only level 32, she had a total of 5 million HP. Tier 1 skills are definitely useless against Serene. In terms of combat techniques, she is also far superior to me. If I wish to defeat her, my only option is to rely on Tier 2 magic scrolls. Although Sherfong had his ultimate skill, Flame Burst, this skill was meaningless if his weapon could not connect with his opponent. Not to mention, in a direct clash of power, Serene would trounce him. Having thought up to this point, Sherfong suddenly stood up. He then replaced the aura of wind with the aura of fire and cast Firestorm at Serene. The platform he currently stood on only had an area of 40 yards. Firestorm certainly covered most of it. At level 7, Firestorms could easily rival a Tier 2 large-scale destruction spell. A tsunami of flames descended from the sky. However, just as the flames were about to engulf Serene, her fingers suddenly moved. In the blink of an eye, she had finished writing the runes required to cast Frost Storm, a Tier 2 large-scale destruction spell. In the next moment, fire and ice clashed, filling the space around the platform with steam. Meanwhile, Sherfeng's Firestorm did not even manage to touch the fallen angel. Fallen angels with high intelligence are really difficult to handle. Sherfeng was not surprised. In the virtual reality games of the past, there would only be two possible outcomes when a player used a skill, either the skill hit or missed. There was no third possibility. In God's domain, however, one would encounter various scenarios when attacking using a skill. Aside from hitting or missing, it was also possible for the skill to be blocked, offset, or unraveled. Blocking a skill would result in one taking a small amount of damage, and normally, this was an action that most lords were capable of. However, offsetting or unraveling a skill was a feat that was doable only for high-tiered monsters and NPCs. Meanwhile, the method Serene had used to deal with Sherfeng's Firestorm was to offset it using a skill of her own. When one successfully offset a skill, they would not receive any damage whatsoever. If even Firestorm is useless against her, my Tier 2 magic scrolls would most likely yield similar results. Sherfong felt a huge headache when he looked at Serene, who was currently hovering in midair. It would be great if Kite were here right now. Kite was a dark gold ranked personal guard. With his strength as a Tier 2 sword master, he could not overcome a Great Lord, which was equivalent to a Tier 3 class, but he could still pin it down for some time. His strength should not be below that of the Tier 1 Fallen Angel Serene. Invincible within the same tier? A sudden inspiration came to Sherfong as he looked at Serene's smiling face. Taboo skill. Taboo skills possess the power to transcend tiers. Meanwhile, although Serene's strength was currently suppressed to Tier 1, her frightening basic attributes and arsenal of Tier 2 skills made her invincible even against ordinary Tier 2 classes. However, if a Tier 2 player managed to grasp a Tier 2 taboo skill, they would similarly become an invincible existence among other Tier 2 classes. Thank goodness I did not store Instant Strike inside my warehouse. As long as I manage to learn it, even if I cannot kill Serene, I still have a chance to defeat her. Sherfeng's eyes glowed. Immediately, he retrieved the skill book of the Tier 2 Taboo skill from his bag and began poring over it carefully. After half an hour passed, Sherfong felt that he was ready. If he wanted to learn the Tier 2 Taboo skill Instant Strike, the first way to do so was to collect 100 Thunder Crystals, which was obviously impossible. The second option was to achieve a 100% skill completion rate. Previously, it had indeed been impossible for him to achieve a 100% completion rate for Instant Strike. However, after the Abyssal Blade was upgraded, his compatibility with the magic weapon had increased significantly. With the help of the 100-berry wine, which he had obtained from Blue Frost, he definitely had a chance to achieve a 100% skill completion rate right now. Hence, Sherfong drank a bottle of 100-berry wine and began rehearsing the Tier 2 Taboo skill Instant Strike. Trying to learn a Tier 2 Taboo skill? Serena revealed a faint smile. Not a bad idea. Unfortunately, the time you have left isn't enough for you to do so. Taboo skills required long periods of bitter training. There were no shortcuts available. Even a gifted person would require several days or over a dozen days to learn a Tier 2 Taboo skill. Sherfong did not have much time left. It was simply impossible for him to succeed in learning the Taboo skill in such a short period of time. Chapter 609 Instant Strike. Chapter 609 Instant Strike. While Sherfong was continuously rehearsing the Tier 2 Taboo skill Instant Strike, a great upheaval rocked the evil ghost domain. The entire District 5 was destroyed overnight, and over half of the district's players had disappeared. To the players in the evil ghost domain, this was an inconceivable situation. Just what could actually wipe out the evil ghost domain's 5th ranking shelter? Not a single shelter in the evil ghost domain would be capable of going up against such a frightening power. Suddenly, a strong sense of crisis filled the air of the entire evil ghost domain. District 1's shelter. Leader Frost, what are we supposed to do now? Best Reincarnation, the leader of the second party, asked worriedly. Based on the information we discovered, it seems that the assault on District 5 comprised of a large number of powerful monsters, all level 40 and above. There were actually numerous lords participating in the monster assault as well. However, this is still not the scariest part. When our players went to investigate the situation at District 5, they encountered some survivors from the shelter. According to the survivors, the ones responsible for annihilating their District 5 were not actually those lords. Instead, it was the doing of a much more powerful monster. However, as they had been too far from the monster at the time, they did not get a clear look at what that monster was. They only know that that monster had annihilated hundreds of players with just a wave of its hand using black flames. It instantly killed even District 5's strongest player, Punishment Day. If we remain in this area, it is quite likely that we will encounter that monster as well. Although District 1 is a lot stronger than District 5, against that rank of monster, we simply stand no chance at all. Everyone present fell silent at Best Reincarnation's words. The enemy that obliterated District 5 was just too terrifying. It had not been easy for them to raise their shelter to the rank it had today. If it was destroyed, then their shelter's rank would also fall by 1, dropping from a medium shelter to a small shelter. If that happened, the advantage of the 100-berry wine they had possessed all this time would vanish as well. There was also no telling whether they would be able to obtain the 100-berry wine again the next time they upgraded their shelter to a medium shelter. Yet, if they moved their shelter to a low-level area, the distance they had to travel every day would be extremely long and time-consuming. They would most likely have to spend the entire day running just to commute between their leveling spots and the shelter. This would greatly impact the development of the shelter. Everyone, listen to me. This is an opportunity for our District 1. Blue Frost said after pondering for some time, an excited smile on his face. Opportunity? What opportunity? Everyone could not understand what was going through Blue Frost's mind. I believe that you guys have heard of this as well. After the incident with District 5, many shelters that previously refused to join a guild force began changing their minds one after another. They are all trying to gain the protection of shelters run by guild forces. In the worst-case scenario, They can also migrate directly to the large shelters of the guild forces and develop themselves there, Blue Frost said. Meanwhile, our District 1 has also joined Zero Wing. However, unlike the other shelters, the guild we joined is very strong. You guys must have seen the teleportation magic array design for yourselves. Brother Yifeng has also stated that, so long as we manage to gather the necessary materials, he will construct a teleportation magic array for our shelter. If we manage to annex the other shelters right now, our position in Zero Wing will also rise. I believe that nobody present wishes to remain as just the party leader of a shelter, right? All the party leaders expressed their agreement with Blue Frost's words. The things Zero Wing had revealed so far were already enough to show just how powerful the guild was, particularly the frightening combat power Shifeng had displayed as well as the funds that he had transferred to them. Zero Wing had even provided them with a training facility. As long as they made contributions to Zero Wing and raised their positions within the guild, they would be able to head to Jinhai City's Big Dipper Training Center and undergo special training for their combat techniques. Every city had their own martial arts dojos and training centers. If one wanted to improve their combat techniques, it was definitely better to have someone guiding them. They had previously conducted some investigations in the real world regarding the Big Dipper Training Center. The moment they checked, however, they were shocked. The Big Dipper Training Center actually had a martial arts master overseeing it. Currently, the Big Dipper was already a famous training center, and many professional fighters from the surrounding cities had gone there to train. It was no longer a place that ordinary people could enter. Moreover, the amount one had to pay in order to become a member there was also not something ordinary people could afford. Although their knowledge regarding first-rate guilds was lacking, they knew full well just how precious a martial arts master was. A martial arts master was the ultimate force of humans. If they could receive pointers from a martial arts master, their combat techniques in God's domain would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Meanwhile, Zero Wing would allow them to undergo special training directly at the Big Dipper. The guild's financial prowess and influence had thoroughly shattered their perception of ordinary gaming guilds. Although they had earned quite a lot of money from playing God's domain, they were still far from being able to afford establishments like the Big Dipper Training Center. If they could climb their way up to Zero Wing's upper management, they would not have to worry about earning enough to support themselves in the future. I'm sure everyone clearly understands what a teleportation magic array represents. What we need to do now is annex the other shelters and obtain the materials required for the teleportation magic array as soon as possible. Even if we retreat from this area, we can simply rely on the teleportation array to return here in the future. After listening to Blue Frost's explanation, everyone nodded in agreement one after another. Previously, they had found it simply too difficult to gain control over the other shelters in the evil ghost domain. However, that changed after the incident with District 5. If they had a teleportation array, the amount of money and resources they could earn would be endless. Hence, the various party leaders began arranging workforces to collect the materials required for the teleportation magic array. At the same time, they also tried persuading the other shelters to subordinate themselves to District 1's shelter. That way, the members of these shelters would get to use the teleportation array of District 1. Inside the Darkness Shrine, Shifeng had already been rehearsing Instant Strike for 5 hours continuously now. After just 5 hours of practice, it was as if Shifeng was a veteran who had been practicing Instant Strike for many years. His movements when executing the Taboo skill were practically the same as the holographic video provided by the skill book. I'm still off by a little. Sure enough, a Tier 2 Taboo skill is not that easy to master. Although Shifeng had already given his all to trying to raise his completion rate, his best record was 95%. Right now, he could not increase it by even an additional %. Moreover, he had only managed to achieve this result because of the Abyssal Blade and the 100-berry wine. Otherwise, he would have taken several days to reach a 95% skill completion rate with Instant Strike. He did not have much time left to practice. Each bottle of 100-berry wine lasted only 1 hour, and he had just 3 more bottles on hand. They would not last him till the very end. "Human, you should give up," The might of a Tier 2 taboo skill is simply too immense. It is not that I am trying to look down on you. However, if you wish to grasp a Tier 2 taboo skill, you will need another 10 days of hard work at the very least. Serena could discern Shifeng's current progress in a single glance. Presently, you have already grasped the motions of the taboo skill completely. Unfortunately, your comprehension of the skill is lacking. With the remaining 5 hours you have, you would be fortunate to raise your completion rate by even just another 1%. Lacking comprehension? Shifeng thought so as well. It was just like when he had achieved a 101% completion rate with Chop. That feeling had gone by in a flash, and he could not grab hold of it even if he wanted to. Comprehension? Compatibility? Does the comprehension Serena is speaking of refer to compatibility? Shifeng did not give it too much thought. He did not have much time left, not enough to wait out the 10-day cooldown to challenge the World Summit again. He then took out all the 100-berry wine in his bag and consumed all 3 bottles in rapid succession. Even with Shifeng's willpower and mental power, he still grew dizzy. The 100-berry wine was just like the black steel beer. The more one drank, the better the effect. Correspondingly, however, the side effects also grew stronger. It was best if players drank just 1 bottle at a time to maintain a clear mind, as players could steadily improve their completion rates and look for any shortcomings in their movements throughout the beverage's effective duration. Consuming too many bottles at once could result in players losing themselves to the alcohol. Now Shifeng downed 3 bottles in one go. His compatibility rate instantly soared. This feeling is really great. At this moment, Shifeng felt as if he had become one with his sword. When he drew the abyssal blade and executed instant strike, each and every one of his movements felt light and natural. There was no excess power in any of his actions at all. Then, Shifeng's initially smooth movements suddenly changed. The afterimages of the abyssal blade, which were originally created due to Shifeng's overly fast speed, suddenly vanished. The abyssal blade in Shifeng's hand also became clear and visible. In the next moment, faint blue electric arcs manifested around Shifeng's body, filling the air with crackling sounds. The places these electric arcs touched also charred. System: Instant Strike Skill Completion Rate 100%. Chapter 610 Higher Realm. Chapter 610 Higher Realm. Arcs of electricity continuously sparked around Shifeng. Although the electric arcs were tiny, the destructive power they contained was practically equivalent to a Tier 2 lightning spell. He actually succeeded! A shocked expression appeared on Serena's beautiful face. Learning a taboo skill was an enormous challenge. It was the same for both players and NPCs with high intelligence. In order to learn a taboo skill, one had to go through long periods of arduous training as well as achieve a certain degree of comprehension regarding the taboo skill. Serena wasn't the only one who was shocked by this result. Even Shifeng himself was quite shocked. It was extremely difficult for a Tier 1 class to learn a Tier 1 taboo skill, not to mention a Tier 2 taboo skill. Moreover, instant strikes requirements were exceedingly high even for a Tier 2 taboo skill. Achieving 100% completion rate on a taboo skill was a feat Shifeng had never managed, despite having been a Tier 3 Sword King in the past. In this life, however, he had actually done so while he was still a Tier 1 class. This was simply a dream. 99 more times to go. I need to hurry up. Although Shifeng was currently somewhat drunk, he was still able to maintain a relatively clear consciousness. To make sure he did not forget the feeling from before, he hurriedly continued with his rehearsal. Unfortunately, none of his next 3 tries managed to achieve a 100% completion rate at all. The highest he reached was 97%. He had only managed to achieve the 100% completion rate before due to luck. On this point, Shifeng was very certain. However, now that there was a first, achieving 100% again would become much easier. Following which, Shifeng continuously tried to recall the feeling he had felt before. His skill completion rate gradually increased as well, and soon after, he managed to maintain a stable 99%. He was only a thread away from 100%. not only do I have to control my own body, but I also have to learn how to adapt to the external environment around me and constantly adjust to the environment. As Shifeng reviewed his memories, he did not only think about when he achieved a 100% completion rate with Instant Strike but also when he had achieved a 101% completion rate with Chop. Whether it was the Refinement Realm or the Flowing Water Realm, both pursued internal control. Before, the Tier 5 Fallen Angel Serena had stated that he had already done very well in terms of movement, and that he was only missing a little comprehension. If it was said that comprehension was compatibility, and that compatibility was adaptation, then what he needed to do was adapt to the environment. If he used the same methods to execute a skill in different environments, the results would naturally be different. This was just like how going from an ordinary environment to a high-gravity one would greatly affect a player's skill completion rate. However, what if this change to the environment was extremely subtle? It was highly possible that ignoring this minor change was the reason why players were never able to achieve a 100% skill completion rate, regardless of how perfect their movements were. Just as Shifeng continued drawing his sword and adapting to the surrounding air flow, the friction between his sword and the air suddenly generated a small spark. This small spark immediately attracted countless arcs of electricity to circle around Shifeng's body. System: Instant Strike Skill Completion Rate 100%. Sure enough, the progression in control goes from internal to external. Is this what the higher realm feels like? Shifeng finally discovered the direction he needed to take to advance. With a clear direction in mind, Shifeng no longer focused his concentration on his own body but instead shifted it towards his environment. As Shifeng grew increasingly familiar with his surroundings, the 100% skill completion rate of Instant Strike grew more frequent as well. Currently, Shifeng was achieving a 100% skill completion rate about once every 4 times he executed Instant Strike. Moreover, during the process of swinging his sword, Shifeng was also constantly making minor adjustments to better adapt his movements to the external environment. After training for another half an hour, Shifeng's improvement was undeniable. He was able to achieve a 100% skill completion rate practically every other time he executed Instant Strike. Before an hour had even passed since drinking the 3 bottles of 100-berry wine, he had already executed 100 instant strikes with a 100% completion rate. After Shifeng completed an instant strike that achieved a 100% completion rate for the 100th time, electricity purified his entire body, his skin becoming glossier and the muscles all over his body growing denser and more powerful. System: You have learned Instant Strike. Obtained Basic Lightning Physique. Why does my body feel a lot lighter? Shifeng was greatly shocked when he saw the faint blue electric arcs coursing around his body. Carefully feeling out the changes to his own body, he exclaimed, "This lightning physique really is mysterious. The gravity my body is under should still be 3g. Yet, the effect the increased gravity has on my body has clearly decreased significantly even though none of my attributes have changed. Right now, the effect feels like the equivalent to a gravity of 5g. After the 3rd evolution of God's domain, the gravitational system had impacted the combat power of players significantly. Meanwhile, now that Shifeng's body had undergone such changes, it would become much easier for him to adapt to his environment. The current state he was in was similar to being under the effects of the 100-berry wine. Although the lightning physique's effects were very much inferior to the 100-berry wines, the fact that it was always active was a huge advantage. This instant strike is simply fantastic. It is actually able to improve a player's physique as well. No wonder it was so difficult to learn. In the past, Shifeng had heard of some taboo skills in God's domain that, when successfully learned, would provide players with additional rewards. However, these taboo skills were usually high-tiered ones. He never expected that the Tier 2 Instant Strike was one such taboo skill. Physique was a kind of hidden attribute in God's domain. If a player's attributes reached a certain level, they would be able to trigger an extraordinary physique, allowing them to carry out feats that were definitely impossible in the real world. This kind of hidden attribute could not be viewed by players, so it was extremely difficult to alter or improve it. However, This kind of hidden attribute would have a significant impact on a player's combat power. After resting for a while and recovering his mental state, Sherfone walked up to Serena, smiling as he said, "Miss Serena, sorry for the long wait. Let us begin now." Currently, not only had he mastered the Tier 2 Taboo skill Instant Strike, but he had also obtained the basic lightning physique. Not only did his body feel lighter right now, but its flexibility had also increased significantly. Sherfone even felt that his reflexes had sped up. However, his reaction speed was still a far cry from that of a gifted talent like Soaring Snake. "Not bad. Despite being a mere mortal, you have actually managed to grasp a Tier 2 Taboo skill while still being at Tier 1. Come, give me your best shot. Hopefully, you are able to entertain me for a little while," Serena said, licking her lips as she looked at Sherfone. The moment Serena was done speaking, the surrounding magma started roiling. The ground also began trembling as the fallen angel released a frightening aura. "Is this the power of a Tier 1 fallen angel?" Sherfone gulped down a mouthful of saliva. He knew that Serena had finally gotten serious. Just her aura alone was enough to render him breathless. Heavenly Dragon's power, activate. Blade Liberation, activate. Sherfone was unwilling to lag behind. After activating Heavenly Dragon's power and Blade Liberation, his strength attribute was now equivalent to a High Lord of the same level. The instant Sherfone activated Twofold Berserk, he tilted his body forward slightly. He then activated Phantom Kill and had his doppelganger get ready as well. Sherfeng's sudden increase in strength surprised Serena somewhat. She had not thought the little human before her was capable of reaching such a level. She then stretched out her right hand. Instantly, a golden holy sword appeared in her hand. Countless wind blades wrapped around her weapon. She cast a Tier 2 skill, Storm Blade, at Sherfone right away. Countless swords of light instantly surged towards Sherfone and his doppelganger. Meanwhile, Sherfone and his doppelganger also simultaneously activated the Tier 2 Taboo skill Instant Strike. Schwa! Both Sherfone and his doppelganger disappeared from where they stood to instantly appear beside Serena. Both swordsmen then began brandishing their swords at the fallen angel. Instant Strike, when activated, increased its user's attack speed by 500% for a short period of time. Originally, Sherfeng's attack speed was already terrifying. Now, Sherfone and his doppelganger sent out dozens of sword lights in the time it took to take a single breath. Moreover, these sword lights had appeared practically simultaneously, with none ahead or behind the others. Such a fast attack! Serena's gaze sharpened as another golden holy sword appeared in her other hand. She then parried the barrage of attacks sent at her. Pung! 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 Serena's sword technique was flawless. Every movement of hers was utterly efficient as she blocked dozens of attacks continuously. However, even if Serena's defense were more perfect, there was still a limit to her attack speed. In the end, Sherfone managed to cut Serena's arm with the abyssal blade, causing -1 damage to the fallen angel. When Sherfone saw the compulsory -1 damage he dealt, his eyes nearly fell out of their sockets. Such a powerful Tier 2 Taboo skill! You were actually able to break through my defense. Serena looked at the bloody cut on her arm. Gently moving her finger across the wound, she instantly returned her skin to its unblemished state. Then she looked at Sherfone, saying, "Although I don't want to admit it, since you were able to injure me, it is your win. You may take these items and leave." Chapter 611 Shrine Rewards. Chapter 611 Shrine Rewards. After Serena was done speaking, the fallen angel suddenly vanished. At the same time, the volcanic hell that surrounded Sherfone transformed into a golden shrine with an altar before him. 3 rainbow treasure chests were stacked up one upon another on the altar, and placed on top of these treasure chests was a thick and heavy black leather book. Victory at last! Sherfone breathed out a sigh of relief. Serena was just too powerful. Whether it was in terms of techniques or basic attributes, he was far inferior to the fallen angel. Sherfone and his doppelganger had sent out over 100 attacks within the 3 seconds of Instant Strike's duration. Yet Sherfone had only managed to land a hit on Serena at the very last second. The fallen angel's strength was simply terrifying. Most likely, even Kite would not be a match for Serena, who had suppressed her strength to Tier 1. If Serena had suppressed her strength to Tier 2 instead of Tier 1, he would not have stood a chance against her at all. Although Shifeng had only managed to get through the test after immense difficulty, his harvest was similarly huge. During his 3 seconds of frantic attacking, Shifeng had thoroughly experienced Serena's perfect sword defense technique firsthand. He had seen for himself the sword technique of an NPC standing at the peak of God's domain. This was not something just any player would get to enjoy, as normally, they would have killed with a single hit. After Shifeng reviewed his memories of the previous battle a few times, he walked up to the altar and carefully picked up the black leather book. As soon as he did so, he felt a hard stare. Moreover, this feeling was not just limited to one person staring at him. Instead, he felt the gazes of a vast number of people. Every one of these gazes felt cold and violent. It was as if his body had submerged in a chilling, icy hell. Sure enough, the Bible of Darkness is not an ordinary item. Shifeng activated omniscient eyes and appraised the black leather book. Bible of Darkness, fragmented legendary item. The Bible of Darkness had been destroyed during the Great Destruction. However, the power of darkness contained within the Bible is extreme. If one can gather the other fragments, they can restore the Bible's power, gaining dominance over all demonic creatures and become the Lord of Demons. It's actually a fragmented legendary item? I heard that the Bible of Darkness Fantasy Extinguisher was an epic item. Was the one he obtained a replica? Shifeng muttered, feeling rather surprised as he looked at the quality of the Bible of Darkness in his hands. However, after giving it some thought, Shifeng felt it was possible. With how powerful Serena was, Fantasy Extinguisher should not have been able to injure the fallen angel at all with the strength he had at that time. It was highly possible that he had chosen the first option instead. Meanwhile, Fantasy Extinguisher had managed to become a peerless expert in the Black Dragon Empire thanks to the Bible of Darkness. With the help of the Bible of Darkness, Fantasy Extinguisher managed not only to become exceedingly powerful himself but also to increase the strength of his guild significantly. Only afterward did Blue Frost and the others from District 1 shine brightly. Back then, countless guilds had looked at Fantasy Extinguisher enviously. There was nothing remarkable about owning a single epic item. However, the Bible of Darkness was no ordinary epic item, as it held the power to increase the overall strength of a guild. The Bible of Darkness was capable of strengthening players with the power of darkness. Not only could players receive a huge boost in attributes, but they could also obtain an enhanced skill corresponding to their classes. This was the reason why the Fantasy Shrine had managed to form the invincible Black Demon Legion in the past, allowing the guild to become one of the tyrants of the Black Dragon Empire. Back then, even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's Blood Legion had not been a match for the Black Demon Legion. If Fantasy Extinguisher had gained such achievements by relying on a replica, what would have happened if he had obtained the real Bible of Darkness? Most likely, the entire Black Dragon Empire would have fallen into the Fantasy Shrine's hands. Shifeng inwardly grew excited as he looked at the Bible of Darkness in his hands. He had finally completed one of the steps required to become an overlord in God's domain. Whether it was the magic weapon Abyssal Blade or the fragmented legendary ranked Heavenly Dragon's Breath, both were items that focused on increasing his personal strength. They were of little use in raising the overall strength of his guild. However, the Bible of Darkness was different. It was an item focused on increasing the overall strength of many players. With the Bible of Darkness in hand, he would be able to form a group of Black Demon Guards. With his special training plan, he would be able to quickly establish a Black Demon Legion that surpassed even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's Blood Legion. At that time, who, in Starmoon Kingdom, would be able to compete with him? After some fantasizing, Shifeng then stored the Bible of Darkness and shifted his gaze towards the 3 rainbow treasure chests. I have really made a killing from the epic quest this time. Not only did I get a fragmented legendary item, but I also obtained a chapter of Shelter and a magic device forging design. Shifeng laughed. He quickly tucked the contents of all 3 rainbow treasure chests into his bag. The first rainbow treasure chest contained 188 soul crystals. Though Shifeng himself had no use for these things, he would be able to upgrade the Lion's Bar to a 2-star bar with this many soul crystals. At that time, the production volume of the 100-berry wine would increase to a level barely enough to supply the upper echelons of both District 1 and 0 Wing. The second rainbow treasure chest contained the chapter of Shelter. Before coming to the World Summit, Shifeng had asked Blue Frost about large shelters in detail. If a small shelter was akin to a small village, then a medium shelter was a small town, while a large shelter was a large town. Why were so many guild forces madly accumulating resources and were adamant in upgrading a shelter to a large shelter? It was because larger shelters possessed a certain degree of self-defense. The number of players a shelter could hold was not unlimited. If players wished to become a resident of a shelter, they had to register themselves with said shelter. Meanwhile, the number of players a shelter could register was limited. If there was no cap to registration, players within the Dark Den would have long since migrated to the best shelters available to develop themselves. It was also precisely this limitation that severely restricted the development speed of a shelter. A small shelter could register a maximum of 10,000 players, which was roughly equivalent to the member count of a small guild. Medium shelters could register up to 30,000 players, which was roughly equivalent to the player population of a small town. Aside from having a larger population, players could also construct some specialty buildings such as the Lion's Bar in a medium shelter. The overall strength of a medium shelter was significantly higher than a small shelter's. Meanwhile, when a medium shelter was upgraded to a large shelter, the number of players the shelter could register would undergo a qualitative change, directly increasing to 100,000. That number could practically rival the member count of a second-rate guild. Moreover, the functions of the shelter would also increase notably. The increase was not limited to just the skill books and specialties supplied. Players of the shelter would also be able to tame mounts. Mounts could be said to be the lifeblood of players residing within the Dark Denver. With no teleportation magic arrays in the Dark Den, players could only rely on their own 2 feet to travel to their desired destinations. With a mount, the mobility of players would improve significantly, and as a result, their strength would also rise much faster than before. Hence, the various guild forces were desperately accumulating resources in order to create a large shelter of their own. This was also why plenty of independent shelters subordinated themselves to guild forces. As long as they joined a guild force, they could head to the large shelter controlled by said guild force and purchase mounts. Otherwise, they would have to wait until their own shelters were promoted into large shelters or try their luck in large-scale team dungeons. Now that Shifeng had the chapter of Shelter, he could directly promote the shelter of District 1 to a large shelter. The players inside the shelter could then begin to accumulate funds and resources. As soon as they reached a sufficient level, they would be able to purchase a mount of their own. Compared to the players of other shelters, the players of District 1 would be able to save up on plenty of time. Although I've obtained the chapter of Shelter, I still don't have a way to return to the shelter right now. It seems that I can only wait until the cooldown of the position teleportation scroll ends before making another trip to District 1's shelter. Shifeng suddenly recalled that he had arrived at the central area of the Dark Den through a teleportation gate. As for the method of returning to the Evil Ghost domain, he had no idea whatsoever. With the items he came for in hand, Shifeng did not continue idling around inside the Lord of Destruction's shrine. He took out a return scroll and began chanting the incantation required to teleport back to White River City. After 20 seconds passed, Shifeng transformed into a streak of light and disappeared from the shrine. Chapter 612 Winds Have Changed. Chapter 612 Winds Have Changed. White River City Teleportation Hall. Due to Zero Wing's ever-growing fame and the candlelight trading firm's wide array of high-end products, many players were attracted to White River City. Currently, one could see plenty of players forming dungeon raiding parties in the wide and spacious teleportation hall. The prosperity and liveliness here were far more intense than in Starmoon City. The moment Shifeng stepped out of the teleportation hall, he could feel the hustle and bustle that filled the city. Other than a large number of independent players who filled the city streets, there were also plenty of guild players. These guild players' average levels were very high. Although they could not compare to the players in the Dark Den, most of these guild players were still level 27 or 28. That was still quite high in the current God's domain. These guild players also wore fine gold and secret silver equipment. They were the envy of ordinary players. That guild is amazing! Its members' equipment looks so amazing! They should be catching up to the powerful guilds in White River City. I've heard of that guild before. It's called Heaven's Burial, and it's one of the newly established White River City guilds. Although it is a new guild, it is very powerful. So far, Heaven's Burial has already raided many 20-man Hell Mode team dungeons and is in the midst of planning to raid 50-man team dungeons. I also heard that the guild has a very powerful backer. A strong backer isn't the only thing Heaven's Burial has. A few hours ago, one of Heaven's Burial's experts managed to break into the 4th floor of the Divine Coliseum. It is the 10th guild in White River City to set foot on the Divine Coliseum's 4th floor. I've been to the newly launched Divine Coliseum as well and paid 1 magic crystal to challenge it. The challenges are insanely difficult. I only managed to reach the 2nd floor after exhausting myself. And I died the moment I set foot on the 2nd floor. In the end, I only got 1 silver as a reward. It was a serious loss. Heaven's Burial is amazing. Even Zero Wing, the most powerful guild in White River City, has only advanced to the Coliseum's 5th floor. The Divine Coliseum, which had recently appeared in God's domain, drew the interest and attention of many players, and every conversation was related to it in one way or another. After God's domain had undergone its 3rd evolution, combat in the game had become more difficult for players. The Divine Coliseum was a very good place to train their combat techniques. Only training there was too expensive. Moreover, the Coliseum only accepted magic crystals as currency. This had caused the price of magic crystals to skyrocket overnight. Since the 3rd system upgrade, the price of magic crystals had doubled. Sure enough, that which should arrive will arrive. Shifeng was frustrated as he swept a glance over the members of Heaven's Burial. Before the 3rd evolution of God's domain, international corporations had only prepared to invest in God's domain. As for other smaller corporations, they had not paid much attention to this particular investment route. However, with the launch of the Divine Coliseum, God's domain's popularity began to show signs of overtaking the fighting competitions in the real world. This situation drove corporations, both big and small, around the world towards the game. With a potential gold mine in sight, these corporations began to increase their investments in the game. For a time, countless new guilds emerged throughout God's domain, all wishing to take a bite of the pie known as God's domain. Among these corporations, several major investors looked to Star Moon Kingdom. Some bought shares of long-standing guilds, while others chose to establish their own guilds. Among these newly established guilds, 3 stood out: Cloud9, Yin Yang Court, and Heaven's Burial. In the past, Heaven Burial had started developing itself in Star Moon City. The guild was clearly ambitious. While Ouroboros and the Star Alliance had been busy fighting each other, Heaven's Burial had taken advantage of the situation and solidified its position in Star Moon City in one fell swoop. In the end, it had even forced the 2 first-rate guilds to suffer quite a few hardships. Shifeng had never expected that, after White River City began to show signs of becoming the #1 city in Star Moon Kingdom, Heaven's Burial would run to White River City to develop itself. Moreover, of the newly established guilds Shifeng had seen so far, Heaven's Burial wasn't the only one of the top 3 newbies to establish itself in White River City. He also saw members of both Cloud9 and Yin Yang Court. Interesting. Everyone's has come to White River City trying to take a bite out of the fat piece of meat that I cooked up. Do they really think that Zero Wing is some kind of pushover? Shifeng could not help but smile. Zero Wing indeed possessed plenty of enemies. In the dark, underworld lurked and spat like a viper. In the light, they had also provoked the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion. As Sherfone made his way to White River City's library, he discovered that, despite having only been away from the city for a short time, many players had acquired their own NPC guards. NPC guards had become beacons of hope for many powerless players. At the same time, these NPC guards had also received attention from the various large guilds. As a result, these NPCs' development speeds were unusually fast. Players who were trying to become merchants were especially interested in these NPC guards. In God's domain, players' activities were not limited to killing monsters out in the fields. Players could also take on all sorts of quests. Many merchant players, who did not possess any combat power, could rely on NPC guards when carrying out special quests. However, the majority of the quests did not allow the assistance of ordinary guards, only personal guards. Just as Sherfone arrived before White River City's library, the sound of his system communicator rang by his ears, and the caller was none other than Everlasting War. "Brother Yifeng, you've finally come online. I've been trying to contact you for a while. How are preparations coming along?" Everlasting War asked, slightly worried. Sherfone was the expert he had recommended. If Sherfone did not pass the selection test, it would stain his reputation. "There are no issues. I can participate in the selection at any time. Seeing as Brother Everlasting is contacting me, has something happened?" Sherfone asked. The selection held in Beast City was tomorrow morning. There was still quite some time before the selection began. Something must have happened for Everlasting War to contact him. "It's nothing major. Only the higher-ups have changed the requirements for the selection. Now, after you pass the selection, you are required to sign a contract and become a member of the company if you join the battle team. Of course, you will receive far more benefits as well. For example, you will be entitled to 5% of the wagers made on the matches you win," Everlasting War explained. "If Brother Yifeng joins the battle team, with your strength, you will easily make more than a dozen times the credits the guild leader of a first-rate guild would normally earn. Once the battle team becomes famous, your status in the world will become even greater than any leader of a first-rate guild. What do you think, Brother Yifeng?" Everlasting War and his group did not particularly care about signing the new contract as they had originally been employees of the company. However, Sherfone was different. He was affiliated with Zero Wing. Moreover, he was one of Zero Wing's core members. He had definitely signed a contract with the guild. If he joined the battle team, unless the company allowed it, he would not be able to be part of any guilds in the future. To put it bluntly, the company was restricting the freedom of the team members instead of cooperating with them. Of course, if Brother Yifeng is selected to become one of the members of the battle team, the company will take full responsibility of the breach of agreement with your guild. Brother Yifeng can rest assured on this." Everlasting War was very confident in Sherfeng's strength, and he desperately hoped that Sherfeng would join their battle team. In his opinion, what did a guild in a virtual reality game amount to? How could it possibly hope to match up against an international corporation? Chapter 613 Peak of Star Moon. Chapter 613 Peak of Star Moon. The benefits Everlasting War had mentioned were quite tempting. The Dark Arena was a place where the various international corporations around the world could secretly compete. The resources and funding involved were on an entirely different level than ordinary arenas. Even just 5% of the gambling rewards was sufficient to make someone a tycoon overnight. Moreover, as one's battle record in the Dark Arena grew, the bets on their matches also increased. The income one could potentially earn through the Dark Arena could even tempt international fighters. To virtual reality gaming experts, that was an astronomical number. However, that was only the tip of the iceberg. Based on what information Sherfone had, in the past, any players who signed a contract with a battle team held extraordinary positions in the corporation that owned the team. If it were a famous player such as Everlasting War, even the upper echelons of international corporations would treat them with respect. The guild leader of a second-rate guild did not even qualify to fawn over such players. They were from entirely different worlds. The third evolution of God's domain arrived too soon. I did not expect these international corporations to discover the importance of expert players so quickly. Shifeng frowned, feeling disappointed. It would have been great if these international corporations had only discovered this fact a few days after the selection tests. However, since these international corporations had discovered the truth, he could not do anything to change it. He was the guild leader of Zero Wing. Moreover, in this life, he had sworn that he would not be controlled by others ever again. Brother Everlasting, since the higher-ups have made this decision, you will have to forgive me for not participating in this election. Shifeng directly refused. Although he could no doubt earn a lot of money, fame, and status in the Dark Arena, in the era of God's domain, a player could similarly obtain all of these things so long as they had the ability. Since he could not earn a large sum of credits through the Dark Arena, he just had to look for some other way. As a reincarnator, he did not believe that he could not earn credits from other avenues. Particularly, from his trip to the Dark Den, he had obtained the teleportation magic array design and magic device forging design. These two items were practically money-printing machines. As long as he had enough raw materials, the money he could make would be astronomical. Everlasting War was slightly stunned by Shifeng's reply. He had not thought that Shifeng would refuse his offer so decisively. However, when he thought about Shifeng's skill, he hurriedly advised, "Brother Yifeng, won't you reconsider? At the end of the day, a gaming guild is only a gaming guild. It is nothing compared to a major corporation that can affect the world's economy. With your skills, I guarantee that you'll at least become vice leader of the battle team." The team's strength did not rely on a single person. After all, each battle team could include up to 10 members. Naturally, the more experts there were in a team, the higher the team's chances were of obtaining victory. In Everlasting War's opinion, Shifeng could most likely rank within the top 3 within their battle team. If they lost the top 3 expert, it would wound the battle team's overall strength. Brother Everlasting, don't waste your time trying to persuade me. Moreover, I have many matters that I need to attend to. Not being able to join is a good thing. Anyways, I still have something to do, so I'll talk to you another time. Shifeng disconnected the call. He then entered the library. Meanwhile, Everlasting War could not help but sigh as he said, "Truly disappointing." Disappointing? What's there to be disappointed about? Isn't he just a core member of a small guild? How strong could he be? He must have realized how weak he actually is. Do you know how many experts of God's domain and professional fighters are trying to join the glorious battle team? Even if he shows up, he will never be selected. A luxuriously dressed middle-aged woman standing across from Everlasting War disdainfully dismissed his concern. 4 bodyguards in black stood next to this woman. All 4 radiated intimidating auras that were capable of making Everlasting War, someone who had once been a professional bodyguard, anxious. Particularly, the rugged-looking man among these bodyguards was very famous in the bodyguard industry. He was known as the Steel Guard, and even some international fighters were no match for him. Director Hua Yifeng is no ordinary expert. If you can restore the recruitment conditions to what they were before and allow him to join the glorious battle team, our chances of beating our next opponent, the Midday Wolves, will be much higher. This will also greatly benefit the company, Everlasting War carefully suggested. The changes in the battle team's recruitment conditions were all due to this woman, Hua Qiushui, standing before him. Although he did not understand why Hua Qiushui had suddenly changed the conditions, this last-minute adjustment troubled him, the leader of the battle team. However, despite his annoyance, Hua Qiushui's position was extraordinary. A single word from her could easily leave him jobless. Hence, he did not dare speak too boldly in front of her. Naturally, I have considered these changes carefully. You only need to focus on how you're going to defeat your next opponent. He is merely a nameless expert. Do you think that, just because we are missing one nameless expert, you're going to lose against your next opponent? Hua Qiushui questioned, her voice low and dangerous. He is just one less nameless expert participating in the selection. There are plenty of God's domain experts coming to take the test. Among them, many are well known in the industry. These people's standards are far beyond his. I think that Vice Leader Journey Leave should administer the test this time around. You should take this time to think of a strategy to deal with the midday wolves. Everlasting War's words had clearly dissatisfied Hua Qiushui. Without hesitation, she had stripped him of his duties for a few days. Helpless, Everlasting War could only agree with the lady director. Inside White River City's library. After entering the library, Shifeng headed towards the building's top floor. Two level 180 Tier 2 white-robed knights stood by the doors. Normally, ordinary players would not dare approach the Star Moon Hall. However, Shifeng had long since become a frequent visitor of this place. Without hesitation, he walked past the knights and opened the doors to the hall. Charlene, who sat beside a table, looked at Shifeng, mildly stating, "You're here." Hearing Charlene's intimate greeting, Shifeng could not help but tense up. "Crap! I forgot to store the coins in my bag." Seeing Charlene's intimate smile, Shifeng suddenly thought of the precious coins he had in his bag. This reaction was practically instinctual now. Although Charlene was an NPC, she seemed more realistic than a real person. Though she always appeared friendly, her actions said otherwise. If not for a few tricks he hid up his sleeves, she would have bankrupted him long ago. "Ha! Come over here. Let me see what you've brought this time." Charlene waved her hand at Shifeng. Suddenly, a huge force tugged at Shifeng's body, sending him flying towards Charlene. Shifeng was shocked at this sudden development. After not meeting for some time, Charlene's strength had increased once more. Charlene, who had been a Tier 4 Great Divine official, had now become a level 200 Tier 5 Red official. At this point, Charlene was many times stronger than Weissman, White River City's magistrate. She stood at the peak of Star Moon Kingdom. Although Shifeng had long since known that Charlene was not an ordinary NPC and that her strength would increase significantly every time they met, her improvement speed was simply mind-blowing. Even he, someone who had played God's Domain for more than a decade, found it astonishing. Just who is Charlene? Questions filled Shifeng's heart. Chapter 614 Demon Gate. Chapter 614 Demon Gate. Just as Shifeng pondered Charlene's identity, a hint of shock surfaced in the red official's golden eyes. "You have actually obtained it!" Charlene could not help but reevaluate her opinion of Shifeng. "And here I thought you would bring me a replica to help you solve your problem." Hearing this, surprise appeared on Shifeng's face. He had only discovered the truth about the replica from the fallen angel Serena. He had not expected Charlene to know about it as well. Charlene could see the question floating in Shifeng's mind. Smiling, she explained, "The Bible of Darkness is not an ordinary item. The Lord of Destruction crafted this item, and it is a treasure used to gain dominance over all demonic creatures. Even though the Bible has been destroyed, it still holds boundless power. There are countless powerhouses who wish to obtain it. In the past, plenty of strong people tried going to the Dark Den to obtain the Bible of Darkness. In the end, however, they only managed to return with replicas. Even so, a replica of the Bible of Darkness still possesses a certain degree of power. There are no problems with using it to solve your great demon problem. Only, at the end of the day, a replica is still a replica. While it might be useful to a weak little adventurer like you, to high-tiered powerhouses, it is hardly worth anything. It is no wonder why Fantasy Extinguisher stopped using the Bible of Darkness after he became a Tier 4 class." Shifeng came to a realization after listening to Charlene's explanation. In the past, Fantasy Extinguisher had made a name for himself by relying on the Bible of Darkness and had even enabled the Fantasy Shrine to overwhelm the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's guild branch. However, after Fantasy Extinguisher became a Tier 4 Spirit Emperor, he stopped using the Bible of Darkness. Back then, everyone had thought that Fantasy Extinguisher had dropped the Bible of Darkness and lost it after someone had killed him. Epic items, particularly special epic items like the Bible of Darkness, an item that would take effect even when inside a player's bag, would not lose its worth with the passing of time. Even a Tier 5 expert could continue to use it. After all, fragmented legendary and legendary items were simply too rare. Even Tier 6 God-ranked players would not necessarily own such items. Owning a unique epic item was still quite impressive. As Sher Fong re-examined the situation, he realized that it was highly possible that the replica of the Bible of Darkness could only display its worth up until Tier 3. If it were not helpful to Tier 4 classes, Fantasy Extinguisher would not have continued to use it. Take it out then, Charlene said softly, her eyes smiling. Sher Fong carefully retrieved the Bible of Darkness from his bag and placed it on the table beside him. Sure enough, it's the real deal. You really are quite the capable fellow. Do you know just how many powerhouses are trying to retrieve the Bible of Darkness? In the end, everyone only returns with a replica. If they knew that a little fellow like you had the real thing, they would most likely go crazy from anger. Charlene nodded, smiling as she scrutinized the Bible of Darkness. She then continued, Since you brought me the genuine article, I'll give you 2 options. The first option is free of charge. For this option, you'll be able to solve the problem of the great demon descending on you. The second option will cost you 1,500 gold and 100 soul crystals. For this option, you can be done once and for all, destroying the great demon that targets you. Sure enough, Sher Fong could not help but send Charlene a contemptuous gaze. Currently, he had a little over 1,600 gold in his bag. This was the money the candlelight trading firm had made while he had been absent. If he gave it all to Charlene, he would become a pauper once more. However, even so, Sher Fong gritted his teeth and handed over the money. If he had chosen the first option, although it might seem like he had dealt with the great demon, in reality, Charlene would only weaken the descended great demon to a level that he could cope with. He would still have to deal with the great demons while descending on him every so often until he could defeat and kill it. In the past, the Darkness's descent plagued Fantasy Extinguisher, requiring him to deal with a weakened great demon every so often and throwing his guild, Fantasy Shrine, into chaos. The fact that he had a second option was considerably lucky. This might be the difference between a replica and the genuine product. Charlene received the coins and soul crystals with a saintly smile. Nodding with satisfaction, she said, All right, step back. Following Charlene's request, Sher Fong moved more than 30 yards away from her. Meanwhile, Charlene held up the Bible of Darkness. After flipping through a few pages, she began chanting a series of incantations, her hand continuously tracing out a line of runes in the air. As the line of runes grew longer, the power of darkness filling the Star Moon Hall grew denser and denser, to the point where Sher Fong could even see faint black mist appear. This black mist desperately gathered in front of Charlene, forming a fourfold magic array. The surrounding space began to blur as well. The powerful mana was even capable of suppressing the space within the hall. This mana is simply too powerful. I can't move at all. Sher Fong was shocked as he stared at the fourfold magic array suspended in midair. A magic array was actually capable of forming its own space. Chances were that only Tier 5 existences like Charlene were capable of forming such an array. After Charlene finished writing the runes, she casually scattered the 100 soul crystals before her. Immediately, all 100 soul crystals transformed into gray smoke. This gray smoke then formed a pair of silvery gray gates. There were countless images of demons engraved on these ancient gates, and every one of these demons was quite famous throughout God's domain. These were existences that even ordinary Tier 4 powerhouses would not dare provoke. Are you trying to summon a demon? Sher Fong frowned at the gray gates. He could clearly feel how frightening their power was. If the gates opened, horrific creatures would most likely crawl out. You've guessed correctly. I am trying to summon a demon. Moreover, I am summoning the great demon that targets you. Otherwise, how are you going to get rid of it? Charlene rolled her eyes at Sher Fong. Her golden eyes then shifted back to the gray gates. In the name of darkness, I summon thee. Emerge, great demon Kildred. The moment Charlene finished speaking, the gray gates abruptly opened. Who dares to summon me? A cold, dark voice boomed through the gray gates. Following which, a figure pushed through the gray gates. This figure sported a large pair of black bat wings and 2 pitch-black goat horns on his head. Pitch-black scaled covered his entire body, and killing intent filled his blood-red eyes. The moment Kildred appeared, He surveyed his surroundings with his blood-red eyes, and he could not help but sneer at what he saw. And here I wondered who had summoned me. It turns out that it's just you, little divine official, and that foolish adventurer, Kildred said disdainfully as he flapped his wings. I did not expect that little ants like you could actually obtain the real Bible of Darkness. As your reward for summoning me, I'll collect your souls and the Bible. Is this great demon stupid? Cherfone frowned at Kildred, confused. Kildred was a level 180 tier 4 great demon. On the other hand, Charlene was a level 200 tier 5 red official. No matter how he looked at it, they were on entirely different levels. Moreover, the great demon had actually called Charlene a little divine official. Did Kildred believe that he was a tier 6 demon god? Huh! Wait a minute. Cherfone immediately discovered the problem. For some reason, the Charlene before him had somehow fallen from being a tier 5 red official to a tier 3 divine official. Little brother, stop daydreaming. Right now your task is to kill him, Charlene instructed as she looked at Cherfone. She paid no attention to the great demon Kildred's provocation. You wish to kill me, the great demon Kildred? You too must be insane. I'll show you what the consequences are for summoning a great demon. Kildred revealed a malicious grin upon hearing Charlene's words. Suddenly, black flames appeared in his hand. Chapter 615 Tier 5 Curse. Chapter 615 Tier 5 Curse. The raging black flames quickly transformed into a ferocious beast that bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced on Charlene. Boom! At the sound of an explosion, the black flames in the air suddenly began to collapse, dissipating into nothingness. You! The great demon Kildred's malicious expression suddenly changed, and he no longer looked down on Charlene. Rather, he gazed at the Tier 3 divine official with solemn eyes. Even Tier 4 classes would find it difficult to deal with soul fire, yet Charlene managed to disperse it without moving in the slightest. One could just imagine what kind of power she contained. No! It wasn't the soul fire that was defeated. My mana! Kildred was horrified as he quickly discovered the true problem. His mana rapidly leaked from his body. Due to the lack of mana, he had lost control of the soul fire he had summoned, causing it to disappear. Standing at a distance, Cherfone was also shocked by Charlene's counterattack. The great demon Kildred's level plummeted, as did his tier. Level 180. Level 170. Level 160. In a short moment, the great demon Kildred had become a level 35 tier 2 evil spirit. He was no longer a level 180 tier 4 great demon. What have you done? Kildred asked, gaping at Charlene in abject horror. Oh, it's nothing. I just used God's Twilight, a tier 5 curse, Charlene said, smiling. While inside God's Twilight's effective area, all beings above tier 2 will be forcefully suppressed by 2 tiers. Naturally, their levels will lower as well. Upon hearing these words, Kildred instantly paled. Cherfone was similarly astonished. A tier 5 curse. This was a spell that could rival the power of a tier 6 god-ranked spell. Kildred, you can only escape this situation by defeating the adventurer before you. Otherwise, you will die here. Although Charlene's voice sounded pleasing to the ears, her words caused even a great demon like Kildred to shudder in fear. Realizing that was his cue, Cherfone unsheathed the abyssal blade in Purgatory's shadow. This should be the final test. Cherfone licked his lips as he stared at the great demon Kildred, who hovered in the air. He had always known that it would not be so easy to obtain the fragmented legendary ranked Bible of Darkness. In God's domain, there was an abundance of epic items. However, fragmented legendary and legendary items that were above epic rank, were extraordinarily rare. If players wanted to obtain one, they would have to pay an unimaginable price. The fact that he had grasped a special fragmented legendary item such as the Bible of Darkness was so little trouble could already be considered a miracle. In the past, to obtain a single fragmented legendary item, the various large guilds throughout God's domain would have to be busy for at least 1 to 2 months, possibly 3 to 4 months. Unless one were extremely lucky and encountered special locations such as the Star River Valley, They would have to rely on quests to obtain a fragmented legendary item. Little ant, a tier 1 swordsman like you dares to draw your sword against me, the great demon Kildred? You are indeed courageous. However, just because I have been suppressed to tier 2, you think you have a chance of defeating me? Kildred laughed angrily as he felt the sting of a deep wound to his pride. How will I know if I don't try? Sherfone laughed. He then approached the great demon one step at a time. Kildred, evil spirit great demon. Level 35. HP 1-000-000/1-000-000. A Tier 2 evil spirit was the equivalent of a Lord-ranked monster. However, due to Kildred's intelligence, his combat power was definitely much higher than an ordinary Lord. His HP, though lower than an ordinary Lord, was also much higher than a player's. As Sherfone approached Kildred gradually, he suddenly discovered something fortunate. While he was under the effects of God's twilight, all of his skills' cooldowns had not only been refreshed, but they had also been reduced by half. It seems my test this time is to defeat a Tier 2 evil spirit while at my peak. Sherfone had initially been worried that he would not be able to use Blade Liberation. Now, however, it seemed that his worries were for naught. Die! The great demon Kildred roared. Suddenly, a black spear appeared in his hand. He then swooped down and jabbed the spear towards Sherfone in rapid succession. In the next moment, streaks of black light rained down on the swordsman. Tier 2 skill, Black Rain Annihilation. Sherfone did not dare to hold back. Immediately, he activated Heavenly Dragon's power and Blade Liberation. He then used the Aura of Wind's activatable skill, Wind Rider, and leaped into the air. With a 280% increase to his movement speed, Sherfeng's speed could rival that of a great lord. Very easily, he escaped the effective area of Black Rain Annihilation. Moreover, due to his ability to fly, he had no need to fear the great demon Kildred's ranged attacks from the air. After avoiding Kildred's Black Rain Annihilation, Sherfone proceeded to activate the Ice Blue Devil Flame, Phantom Kill, 9 Dragons Slash, Black Emperor, and Purgatory Power, instantly pushing his combat power to its peak. Immediately, both sides began a fierce and deadly dance. With Wind Rider active, Sherfone held an absolute advantage in terms of speed. As a result, he was able to dodge all the great demon's attacks easily. Kildred could not even make contact with Sherfeng's body. On the other hand, sword lights bombarded on the scales covering Kildred's body, easily penetrating the great demon's armor. Chop. Minus 25,641. Thunder Flame Explosion. Minus 47,156. Thundering Flash. Minus 14,527. Minus 18,546, minus 24,716. Every skill Sherfone executed had a completion rate of 95% or above, allowing his skill's effect to increase significantly. The great demon Kildred's 1 million HP decreased at a rate visible to the naked eye. After a measly 5 seconds, the great demon only had 70% of his HP remaining. However, Sherfone suddenly discovered that, as he relentlessly attacked the great demon, his opponent's strength and speed began to rise. Originally, when he had activated twofold Berserk, his strength should have rivaled even a high lord of the same level and overwhelmed the great demon Kildred. After a short period of intense battle, however, Kildred's strength was already equal to his. The great demon's speed also quickly caught up. This can't continue. Although I don't know whether he is growing stronger due to the length of battle increasing or his HP decreasing, I need to finish him off as soon as possible. Sherfone used Flame Burst. Suddenly, 2 miniature suns appeared and illuminated the Star Moon Hall. 24 consecutive strikes. Both Sherfone and his doppelganger used Flame Burst at the same time. 24 sword lights cut across the space of the hall, striking the great demon Kildred. Every sword light from Sherfone dealt over minus 20,000 damage to the great demon. His doppelganger caused over minus 10,000 damage with each attack as well. When critical hits were achieved, the damage of the attacks doubled. When the attacks ended, the great demon Kildred suffered a total damage of over -500,000. This? Sherfone was stupefied when he saw the great demon that he had attacked. At this moment, the great demon Kildred had only 40% of his HP remaining. Meanwhile, a faint, black light radiated from Kildred's body. Tier 2 skill Dark Shield. It was a spell that could absorb a relatively large amount of damage. Damn it! Sherfone frowned. Flame Burst was his ultimate skill. Yet, the great demon had actually managed to negate a portion of its damage. Currently, the great demon Kildred had grown more formidable after the attack. Meanwhile, there were less than 10 seconds left on Blade Liberation's duration. Ha! My strength has completely surpassed yours now. Die, human! Kildred snorted. He then threw his spear at Sherfone. Kildred's spear was extremely fast, and even Sherfone only barely managed to block it with his swords. Pun! Sherfone was immediately struck down from the air, his body colliding heavily with the floor and shattering it. A damage of close to -1,100 points appeared above his head. This was the damage he received after blocking the great demon's attack. If he had failed to block the attack, he would have lost far more than a little over 1,000 HP. However, the great demon Kildred was not finished. Suddenly, Kildred split into 2 copies of himself. These 2 Kildreds looked exactly the same, and their attributes were equally frightening. In the next moment, one Kildred charged at Sherfeng's doppelganger while the other charged at Sherfone. Chapter 616 Promotion to Count. Chapter 616 Promotion to Count. 2 identical great demon Kildreds attacked Sherfone and his doppelganger. Sherfone, who had been at a disadvantage in terms of strength, had no choice but to dodge the great demon's attacks. Although Sherfone had entered the flowing water realm and could predict the trajectories of Kildred's attacks, the great demon's spear was like a venomous snake that consistently sent fatal blows towards his blind spots. If any other player stood in his place, not to mention dodging, even blocking the attacks would be difficult. Facing the unavoidable attacks, Sherfone had no choice but to block with his swords. However, the great demon Kildred's strength was simply too intense. Each of his attacks managed to push Sherfone back by several steps and inflict slightly more than -1,000 damage. Fortunately, Heavenly Dragon's power had increased Sherfeng's defense and HP by 300%. With over 30,000 HP, Sherfone could endure the great demon's assault for quite some time. Only, Sherfeng's twofold berserk state could only last for 20 seconds. Once these 20 seconds were over, he would enter a weakened state, and would lose all power to resist the great demon. A short moment later, the other great demon Kildred defeated Sherfeng's doppelganger. Ha! Human, you are quite amazing. A mere Tier 1 swordsman like yourself has actually managed to damage me, the great demon Kildred, to such an extent. As a reward, I'll let you become my puppet, and you can follow my orders for the rest of your life. Kildred sneered at Sherfone, who desperately tried to defend against his attacks. Standing at a distance, Charlene frowned slightly as she watched the battle. Sighing, she muttered, "Was it still too soon?" Now, Sherfone no longer had his doppelganger. His ultimate skill, Flame Burst, was also on cooldown. Even though he was under the effects of God's Twilight, reducing his cooldowns by half, Flame Burst still had a cooldown of 1 minute, 30 seconds. Most importantly, he had to face 2 great demon Kildreds who had the same attributes and 40% HP remaining. Sherfone had no chance of winning. It would be Sherfeng's end once the 2 great demon Kildreds launched a pincer attack. Human, be at ease and become my slave! In the blink of an eye, the 2 great demon Kildreds appeared in front of and behind Sherfone, both great demons revealing a ferocious expression. This is just a twin life technique. Do you really think that I have no way of unraveling it? At this moment, Sherfeng's previously stern expression suddenly vanished. On the contrary, he revealed a disdainful and victorious smile. Hearing Sherfone mention the words, "Twin Life Technique," Kildred's expression turned grim. Twin Life Technique was a special skill that did not possess any tiers. It was a skill that utilized the aid of a treasure to produce a doppelganger with the same capabilities as the original, though both the doppelganger and the original shared the same HP. However, unlike the original, the damage the doppelganger received would be increased by 300%. While Twin Life technique boosted its users' combat power, it also increased the damage they took. The skill was a double-edged sword. If used correctly, it could display boundless power. If used badly, one would cut their own lifeline with this skill. So what if you know about the Twin Life technique? Can you tell which one is real and which is fake? Kildred did not believe that Sherfone could differentiate the true Kildred from his doppelganger. The doppelganger the Twin Life technique had created was exactly the same as the original. It was impossible to tell the difference by sight alone. Even if you identify the doppelganger, will you be able to block the attacks from both of us? Sherfone did not reply to the great demon. Instead, he pointed the abyssal blade towards the hall ceiling. Suddenly, countless golden divine swords appeared above them. When these golden swords descended, two different damages appeared above the two great demons' heads. The great demon in front of Sherfone received over -5,000 damage, while the one behind Sherfone received over -15,000 damage. At this point, it was obvious which was real and which was fake. However, Sherfone was not finished with his attacks. Tightening his grip around the abyssal blade, he swung the magic weapon downwards. Abyssal Curse. Suddenly, the space within 30 yards around Sherfone took on the effects of a quagmire. The two great demon Kildreds were unable to move. Although Kildred was immune to fainted effects and other control conditions, the abyssal blade was as powerful as an epic weapon. Even if Abyssal Curse could not restrict the great demon for a full 5 seconds, to Sherfone, 2 or 3 seconds were more than enough. I've been waiting for this moment. Sherfone activated silent steps and appeared behind Kildred's doppelganger. Suddenly, the abyssal blade in Sherfang's hand released a dazzling flame. This? How is this possible? How can you still use that skill? Kildred's originally calm expression abruptly changed. The skill Sherfone currently used was none other than Flame Burst, the skill that had previously inflicted massive amounts of damage. However, Sherfone had used that skill recently. Now, the swordsman used it against his doppelganger once more. Die! Sherfone did not bother explaining anything to the great demon. In truth, while Kildred's doppelganger faced off against his doppelganger, he had used up the 30 stacks of Death Aura on Flame Burst. Each stack of Death Aura could reduce the cooldown of a skill by 3 seconds, and 30 stacks just happened to grant him 90 seconds. Once his doppelganger died, he pretended to struggle against one of the great demon's attacks, allowing the two great demon Kildreds to launch a pincer attack and giving him a good opportunity to deal with the great demon's doppelganger. 12 consecutive strikes bit into the great demon's immobile doppelganger. Even when Sherfone had used Flame Burst on the real great demon Kildred, each of his attacks had dealt over -20,000 damage. Now that the damage was amplified by 300%, each strike dealt over -60,000 damage against Kildred's doppelganger, or -120,000 damage with a critical hit. Against such frightening damages, Kildred's doppelganger died instantly. No! Kildred released a frustrated scream. Unfortunately, Twin Life technique made it so that both doppelganger and the original shared the same HP. The doppelganger's death meant the original's death. The great demon Kildred would never have guessed that Sherfone was a reincarnator. Not only was Sherfone extremely familiar with many of the skills in God's domain, but he also knew the weaknesses of the various skills. After Sherfone killed the great demon Kildred, a golden glow appeared around his body. Moreover, this golden glow appeared twice in a row. Sherfang's level immediately jumped from level 32 to level 34. Such an abundant amount of EXP, Sherfone said in shock. As the class he possessed was the hidden class Blade Saint, the EXP he required to level up was double of what other players required. Now that he had leveled up twice in a row, not only had he earned back the level he had lost at the World Summit, but he also gained a level beyond that. System: Epic Quest, Darkness Descends, completed. Quest rewards: Demon Slayer. Title: Star Moon Kingdom reputation plus 50, White River City reputation plus 500, automatically promoted to the status of Count in White River City. System: congratulations on becoming a Count of White River City. You can now employ 100 guards, including 4 personal guards. You can also enjoy a 20% discount on all expenditures in White River City. As expected of an epic quest, I've been promoted to a Count after completing a single quest. I can lessen my costs significantly when I head to the Divine Colosseum, Sherfong said, smiling. If a Viscount was considered a major noble, then a Count was a top figure among major nobles. In God's domain, the highest social status a player could attain in a city like White River City was Marquis. Only in a capital city like Star Moon City could players become dukes. Thus, becoming a Count of White River City was quite impressive. To players, the largest difference between a Count and a Viscount, aside from the difference in status and the number of guards they could employ, was the Divine Colosseum. The Divine Colosseum was a location where players could raise their combat power. Meanwhile, the Colosseum required magic crystals as currency. However, Viscounts or below would not receive any discounts at the Divine Colosseum. Only Counts or above would enjoy that benefit. This was also one of the reasons why many players had strived to increase their reputation and become Counts. That way, one could lessen the burden on their wallet. Compared to ordinary players, a Count's title held far more importance to players who owned private lands because Counts possessed much greater authority. This authority was also the capital that a player required if they wished to rise and succeed in a city. Chapter 617 Book of Legends. Chapter 617 Book of Legends. After the great demon Kildred died, Sherfong discovered a particularly interesting item. A design had dropped from the demon. However, this was no ordinary design. The design Kildred had dropped was nearly 4 times larger than ordinary designs. Stable design! Sherfong could not help his shock after examining the item. In God's domain, after players reached level 40, they could use mounts rather than relying on their own 2 feet to travel. Players could purchase common mounts from the various large cities. Of course, players were also required to have a certain amount of reputation before they could make this purchase. As for higher-ranking mounts, players could only obtain them through quests, raiding team dungeons, and killing high-ranking field bosses. Guild players had one other avenue to obtain a mount: the guild mount. Guild mounts were different from the generalized mounts that one could purchase from cities. They were mounts unique to guilds. They could also be considered the symbol of a guild. Not only did guild mounts possess higher movement speeds than common mounts, but they could also be upgraded. Only upgrading a mount was very difficult. However, high-quality mounts were an ordinary player's dream. How could a guild obtain guild mounts? They could do so with the stable. In order to obtain a guild mount, a guild had to construct a stable in its residence and recruit NPCs to nurture the mount. Guild members could only purchase these mounts with guild contribution points. In the past, to obtain a guild mount, many independent players had desperately tried to join a guild. As for why they were so desperate to obtain a guild mount, aside from guild mounts having higher movement speed and being upgradable, the key benefit was that the mounts had unique appearances. Guild mounts had different appearances from the common mounts one could purchase from cities, so if one rode a guild mount while roaming a city's streets, they would attract a lot of attention. Not only could a guild mount serve to raise the reputation of its rider, but they were great icebreakers. The mounts one could purchase from cities only consisted of horses. The only difference between them was their coloring. However, guild mounts were not limited to horses. There were many other rideable species. Based on Sherfeng's knowledge, there were several thousand mount species in God's domain. Hence, most guilds would have their own unique mounts. Why were there so many species of guild mounts? It was because guild mounts were either wild beasts or demonic beasts that had been captured, tamed, cultivated, and propagated until they were finally rideable. This was why there were so many species available. Similarly, it was not easy for a guild to obtain a guild mount. This required a large amount of resources and manpower. Now that I have the stable design, I can push ahead with the plan to develop Zero Wings mount. Feng had considered a few locations where he could capture rare mounts. In the past, the various large guilds throughout God's domain had headaches over the acquisition of their guild mounts. After all, depending on the beast they caught and the method they used to nurture said beast, the mount's attributes would be different. If a beast were nurtured properly, it could start with a rank close to bronze. The mount could also increase movement speed up to 115%. One could just imagine how beneficial this would be to a guild. While everyone used common mounts, they could obtain a mount that was close to bronze rank. With some additional nurturing, the guild would have a batch of bronze mounts. At bronze rank, mounts could assist players in battle. This alone would allow them to widen the gap between themselves and other players. Hence, in the past, the various large guilds would nurture the beasts they captured with extreme care to avoid a late start against other guilds. The sooner a guild possessed the stable design, the sooner they could start preparing their guild mounts. However, the stable design was extremely rare. The easiest method to obtain it was through raiding level 20 to level 60, 100-man team dungeons. Only, the drop rate for the design was abysmally low. In the past, even when guilds had offered to purchase a stable design for 5,000 or 6,000 gold, nobody was willing to sell theirs. Initially, Feng had planned to wait for everyone in the guild to grow stronger before raiding 100-man team dungeons. Now that the great demon Kildred had dropped this design, it had saved him plenty of time. After Feng stored the stable design excitedly, Charlene closed the Bible of Darkness and turned to Feng, saying softly, "Not bad. You actually managed to defeat the great demon Kildred. However, even though Kildred is dead, why is there still such a dense power of darkness lingering around you?" Seeing Charlene's confused expression, Feng quickly came to an understanding. He then retrieved Moloch's ring from his bag, saying, "This should be why." "Moloch's ring!" Charlene instantly recognized the ring. Surprised, she asked, "How did you get your hands on this ring?" "I stole it from a great demon called Nettle," Feng responded honestly. "Stole it?" Charlene's eyes narrowed suspiciously. She obviously did not believe Feng's claim. A Tier 4 great demon at full power only needed to swing his hand to wipe Feng out of existence. Feng would simply not survive an attempt to steal the ring from the great demon. "Are you really not afraid of death, or are you just that ignorant? You actually had the guts to remove the seal on the ring. Fortunately, you only obtained Moloch's ring now. I guess you are somewhat lucky." Legend has it that Moloch's ring is related to the fall of the Lord of Balrogs. Moreover, this ring is a complete legendary item. With your strength, this ring will devour you very quickly. Devour? Feng thought back to when the great demon Nettle had chased after him. If not for his good luck, he would have certainly died. When I say devour, I mean it in the literal sense. Do you really think a legendary item is easily controlled? Charlene rolled her eyes at Feng. Based on what I know, several hundred years ago, the demon that guarded this ring was a Tier 5 Great Demon King. After that Great Demon King was devoured, it became the current Great Demon Nettle's turn to guard it. Feng broke out in cold sweat upon hearing these words. At this moment, Feng understood what Charlene was trying to say. The so-called guardian of Moloch's ring was nothing but a sacrifice for the ring to devour. Meanwhile, those demons had been unaware of the fact that they were sacrifices. To make matters worse, he had foolishly stolen the ring without knowing this fact. If even a Tier 5 Great Demon King had not been able to avoid its fate, with Feng's current strength, he stood absolutely no chance against Moloch's ring. In the past, in order to seal this ring, 10 Tier 5 powerhouses sacrificed themselves. Now that you have removed one of the seals, if you wish to seal it again, you will need the help of at least 3 Tier 5 classes. Otherwise, no matter where you go, you will not be able to hide from your fate. Seeing Feng's grim expression, Charlene could not help but laugh as she said, "However, I have also said that you are somewhat lucky." "Lucky?" Feng grew curious. "That's ring. Your luck is quite good. You were able to obtain the real Bible of Darkness. If you had returned with a replica, even I would have no way to save your little life." Charlene rubbed her forehead lightly, saying seriously, "The Bible of Darkness is a treasure made by the Lord of Destruction. If one wields the Bible of Darkness, they can rule over every demon in existence. The Lord of Balrogs is no exception. As for why the Bible of Darkness is capable of ruling over demons, it is because the Bible is the origin of all demons. All demons have evolved from the Bible. With the Bible of Darkness, one possessed the power to restrain all demons. Of course, in its current state, it won't be able to suppress Moloch's ring. Only the complete Bible of Darkness has the power to do so. What you need to do now is repair the Bible of Darkness. Do you understand?" Chapter 618 Target, Tier 2. Chapter 618 Target, Tier 2. Repair the Bible of Darkness? Shifeng laughed bitterly. In God's domain, some fragmented legendary items could be repaired to their peak conditions, which was legendary rank. However, very few fragmented legendary items could actually be repaired. Otherwise, legendary items wouldn't have been so rare in the past. In the case of the fragmented legendary ranked Heavenly Dragon's Breath, the ring's description clearly expressed how it could be repaired. In the case of the Bible of Darkness, however, the description only provided a vague clue. How was he supposed to repair it? Of course, it won't be easy to repair the Bible of Darkness. With your current strength, you can't repair it at all. Fortunately, you have only removed one seal on Moloch's ring thus far. You still have enough time to prepare, Charlene said slowly after perceiving the current state of Moloch's ring with her magic. Lady Charlene, how long do I have? Shifeng asked rather anxiously. That depends on you. Charlene smiled as she glanced at Shifeng. Me? Shifeng was stunned. That's right. The stronger you are, the more time Moloch's ring will need to accumulate enough power to devour you. Based on your current level, you have roughly 50 to 60 days. It would be the best if you reach Tier 2 within 50 days. If you can do so, Moloch's ring will require far more power to devour you. Of course, there is a catch. If you continue releasing the seals on the ring, the speed at which the ring accumulates power will grow. Hence, the deadline depends on you. Hearing Charlene's explanation, Shifeng immediately came to a realization. In the past, the first top-tier expert to have been promoted to a Tier 2 class appeared 3 months after God's domain launched. However, Shifeng was a Blade Saint. He required twice as much EXP as ordinary classes to level up. Although he was a reincarnator, it would still be somewhat difficult for him to become a Tier 2 class within 50 days. The issue wasn't leveling speed, but that the advancement quest was too challenging and time-consuming. Hence, in the past, even top-tier experts had only obtained their Tier 2 classes 3 months after the game launched. The advancement quests for hidden classes were far more difficult, and the time required to complete them was much longer. If he had to complete his advancement quest within 50 days, he really didn't have much confidence of succeeding. If he had 60 days instead, then he would have significantly more confidence. Yet, the deadline Charlene had given him ranged between 50 and 60 days. Who knew how much time he actually had? Because of how specific Charlene was, Shifeng even began to wonder if the main god system set such a deadline purposefully. You are already very lucky. If you had not acquired the Bible of Darkness, Moloch's ring would not have required so much time to devour you. However, with your current strength, you have no chance of repairing the Bible of Darkness. Look for me again once you are promoted to Tier 2. Charlene waved her hand lightly. The Bible of Darkness then floated to and hovered before Shifeng. Oh, right. Don't forget about the task I gave you. Finished speaking, Charlene vanished. There was no trace of her throughout the Star Moon Hall. This is will projection, Shifeng stated, shocked when he saw Charlene disappear. Will projection was not a profound skill or something similar. It was an ordinary Tier 4 skill. In the past, many Tier 4 magical class players had known how to use the skill. However, the doppelganger summoned through will projection only possessed a small portion of the original strength. The doppelganger could not be used as a fighting force. It was a skill normally used for probing and reconnaissance. Yet, it had not been Charlene who had summoned a demon gate and suppressed a Tier 4 great demon with a Tier 5 curse, but her doppelganger. Charlene had easily completed these feats by relying on a weakened copy. In terms of strength, she definitely stood at the very top among Tier 5 NPCs. When Sherfone recovered from his shock, he discovered that the Bible of Darkness had undergone some changes. Bible of Darkness, fragmented legendary item. The Bible of Darkness had been destroyed during the Great Destruction. However, the power of darkness contained within the Bible is extreme. If one can gather the other fragments, they can restore the Bible's power, gaining dominance over all demonic creatures and become the Lord of Demons. Skill 1. Demon Summoning. Summons the demon gate with the power of darkness, calling forth a random demon that is no higher than 1 tier and 10 levels than the summoner. Maximum tier cannot exceed tier 5. The holder of the Bible of Darkness can command the summoned demon for up to 5 hours. Cooldown 3 hours. Skill 2. Gate of Darkness. Allows teleportation to the Dark Denver. Can also be used in the Dark Den to teleport to the outside world. Can teleport a maximum of 5 people at a single time. Cooldown 1 day. Skill 3. Light of Darkness. Strengthen a player with the power of darkness, allowing said player to wield the power of darkness. Can strengthen up to a maximum of 600 people. Every player strengthened provides 1 source of darkness to the wielder of the Bible of Darkness. Skill 4. Power of Darkness. Fill your body with the power of darkness, increasing all attributes by 60%, decreasing cooldown of all skills by 30%, and increase damage by 50%. Duration will be equal to the number of source of darkness * 1 second. Power of darkness cannot stack. Can only strengthen players up to a maximum of tier 5 classes. Cooldown 6 hours. So, that's the case. It's no wonder Fantasy Extinguisher had stopped using the Bible of Darkness replica after reaching tier 4. Sherfone was overjoyed after seeing the Bible of Darkness's attributes. In the past, there had been 2 reasons why Fantasy Extinguisher was able to become a tyrant among Tier 3 classes. One was his reliance on the demon he summoned, and the other was the power of darkness. However, the demons Fantasy Extinguisher could summon had only been as strong as their summoner, possessing the same tier. Moreover, he could only summon a maximum of 1 demon at a time. Even so, it had been quite impressive. After all, a demon of the same tier was a lot more powerful than a monster of the same tier. Although it still could not compare to a fine gold-ranked personal guard, demons that died could be resummoned. On the other hand, if a player's personal guard died, they would have to go through a lot of trouble to resurrect said guard. However, the Bible of Darkness replica Fantasy Extinguisher had obtained most likely could only be used up to tier 3. On the other hand, the real article in Sherfeng's hand could be used up to tier 5. The gap between the real and the fake was massive. The most frightening aspect of the real Bible of Darkness was the fact that it was capable of summoning a demon that was 1 rank higher than the summoner. Sherfone was currently tier 1, so he could summon a tier 2 demon. When he reached tier 2, he would be able to summon a tier 3 demon. With this, who could possibly challenge him? The only unfortunate thing was that the skills summoned a random demon. There was no guarantee that he would summon a demon of a higher tier. Meanwhile, Power of Darkness was a berserk skill that was famous throughout God's domain. Although the skill did not increase one's attributes much, its duration was extremely long. It was at least 2 or 3 times longer than ordinary berserker skills. Moreover, there were no side effects. Fantasy Extinguisher's Power of Darkness lasted 6 minutes, while mine can last up to 10 minutes. Even the number of people I can buff has increased to 600. Sherfeng's heart burned with passion when he thought of forming his own Black Demon Legion. A Black Demon Legion with a total of 600 members. As long as the members of the Black Demon Legion were around the same level, they could definitely go on a crusade against a town controlled by the forces of darkness, capturing it, and constructing their own guild town. Sherfeng then stored the Bible of Darkness. The Bible of Darkness was not equipment. It could take effect even from inside a bag. Hence, it was extremely difficult for others to plunder it. Now that Shifeng had the Bible of Darkness, he would not waste any more time. He immediately departed from the library and headed towards Zero Wing's residence by way of horse carriage. On his way, Shifeng contacted Aqua Rose. "Aqua, have the members of the main force gather at the residence," Shifeng said. "Guild leader, the main force is currently raiding a dungeon. Our efforts will go down the drain if we recall them now." Many guilds in White River City have already reached the final boss. Aqua Rose did not understand Shifeng's intentions. Currently, the various large guilds in White River City desperately vied for the first clear of the 50-man team dungeon, Ruins of the Crow God. If they recalled Zero Wing's main force right now, they would have wasted a lot of precious time. "Relax, it won't be a problem." Shifeng was very familiar with the final boss in the Ruins of the Crow God. "It will not be that easy to raid." Smiling, he said, "Moreover, I'm calling them back to help them clear the dungeon." "Guild leader, are you serious?" Aqua Rose grew excited. To conquer the Ruins of the Crow God, the various large guilds had tried every hand and exhausted every ounce of brainpower they had. They have never encountered such a difficult dungeon boss before. They were truly helpless against it. Everyone could only try to force their way through the boss again and again. If they had a raiding strategy, then they would have a much easier time dominating the dungeon. "Of course. When have I ever lied to you?" Shifeng laughed. "Okay. I'll notify them right away." Aqua Rose's eyes shone with renewed passion. After disconnecting her call with Shifeng, she immediately notified Zero Wing's main force. "You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.